Welcome to the Normal America Show, which I promised to stop calling it that eventually, but my stupid logo's still up there, so what can you do? Name's robnoerr. Hope you're ready for a great show. Got a debate tonight. I'm going to try to start the debate early, but the person that's going to be debating me, I'm going to call him Arch. I don't know what the hell he wants to go by. It's midnight there, King Barnaduke. Jesus, get some sleep. I told him we'd start at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Earlier would be better for me. I'd like to finish at a reasonable hour. We shall see. But yeah, there's things to talk about. I want to separate myself from the bad faith hacks that I constantly debate in the left. And I thought that it was important to talk about a story that's just breaking right now that has to do a lot of things that I've talked about surrounding corruption in the Biden family. And I think it's important. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do this, maybe. Okay, so the chat's gone. And I'm going to record this. I'm going to put it up on X and probably put it up as its own thing on YouTube. Because I'm not bad faith and I'm willing to talk about stories that are difficult to topics that I talk about. I'm not like the left that'll just, when a story comes out that's bad for them, they just go, I can't talk about this for a week and a half. I hope another story breaks. Right. I'm not that. I don't need to do that. What's going on here? I'm getting confused. Give me a second. There we go. Okay. So, let's do this. So there's a story breaking that this guy, I think his name's Smirnov or something like that. He is the guy that was the source for the FBI's 1023 on the Bidens. Now, this is a story that I've covered, which is that there was this confidential human informant for the FBI that was someone that we were told that the FBI had worked with previously and trusted previously in previous cases. And this guy reported that he had a meeting with the leader of Burisma, and that leader told him, amongst other things, that he personally paid $5 million of a bribe to both Joe and Hunter Biden, and said a lot of other things that were damning of the Bidens. I correctly said that this was a damning story and needed to be investigated, particularly given the precedent that we'd seen. So when there were salacious rumors from confidential human sources about Donald Trump, it led to one of the most significant investigations in the history of the FBI, which had leaks to the press and lasted for years, that being the Russia collusion hoax. Christopher Steele was that confidential human source. Christopher Steele had no verification, nor did the FBI have verification of his stories, but still used that to then get FISA warrants to spy on people connected to Trump's team and to do a larger investigation into Trump's team. So given that the precedent was set and the severity of the allegation, unlike Christopher Steele's allegations, though there were serious things that were said about people connected to Trump, this directly implicated Joe Biden. And I said that this was a serious case. That person who said that they were the confidential human source has been arrested tonight and is accused of making the whole story up. I've read through the indictment, which is 40-something pages. I read through it, though obviously it was very quick. I have a debate that I'm preparing for tonight, so I tried to read through that as fast as possible because I'm not going to be like the people on the left and ignore a story that's bad for my side in hopes that another story breaks, and so then people will just forget the stories that are bad for my side. So there's several things to say about this. One, we haven't heard this person, this Smirnov or whatever his name, I haven't looked into exactly who this person is, but his name is listed in the indictment, so I don't think I'm doxing someone or being unreasonable by saying his name. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correct. Anywho, we haven't heard his side of the story, so he might say, that's not true. Here's my defense. What I'm being accused of isn't true. There is actual proof that this happened, etc., etc. So that's the first thing to say. We shall see when we get more details. Secondly, what the indictment says is their evidence is predominantly that they were unable to find things like travel records, and in fact, they found records that suggest that not only was there not a potential meeting that occurred when this gentleman first said that these meetings were occurring, which was 2015 and 2016 during the Obama administration, but that there's actual messages they found from his phone, because apparently they've looked into his electronic devices, and that seems to suggest that he was being introduced to these people in 2017. Now, let me be clear. If that's true, this dude most likely made this shit up. If he said, because it's not just, this is the difference. It's not just a matter of misremembering dates, which theoretically is possible. But if his story was, I was talking to these people about the decision that Biden was about to make as vice president. But when he was talking to them, Biden wasn't even the vice president. That sort of puts shade on the entire story. So it is entirely possible that this dude made this shit up. That is absolutely entirely possible. And if that's the case, the dude deserves to go to prison. Now, I don't trust anything our FBI says at face value. That doesn't mean that the FBI is always wrong or always corrupt or always, well, they're corrupt, but are always lying. For example, they could say there is a terrorist that committed an act. That could entirely be true. I just no longer, because of the corruption of the FBI, take what they say at face value. So we'll see the evidence that they present, and we'll see what the rebuttal is to it. But it is important for my credibility and for everyone's credibility that you're honest if something that you talked about turns out to not be true. I should be more careful when I'm speaking to always include in posts I'm making or in videos I do if this is true. That is something I should say. Now, given the standards set forth from the Democrats and from our corrupt FBI, where they've taken salacious rumors as proof positive that Trump's committed heinous acts or people connected to Trump's committed heinous act, and actually went further than that and used that without verifying it in order to continue to investigate them, this seems like par for the course, but I should hold myself to a higher standard. So I'm not going to be deleting any post on X or deleting any videos where I said that this was a huge deal. I stand by that it was a huge deal. I stand by that it should have been investigated, that the finances of the Bidens should have been investigated. That's the precedent that was set forth with Christopher Steele. And make no mistake, the FBI knew Christopher Steele was lying early in the process and was unable to verify any of his information. And people say, Christopher Steele didn't lie. He just said, I heard rumors through other people. No, Christopher Steele lied to them when he told the FBI, when they asked him not to talk to the press, he said, I'm not talking to the press. And then they found out that he was. And that's when they had to let him go. So they could have charged him for lying to them, but they didn't. Instead, they took his evidence, and which was misinformation, and continued to use it to spy. So there are differences, but that doesn't mean that this guy couldn't have made up this whole story. Now, does this prove that Joe Biden didn't use a quid pro quo to fire a prosecutor to help his son's company? No, not in the slightest. But this certainly was a big piece of evidence that suggested that may be the case. I mean, an actual smoking gun would have been if they found $5 million that went into Joe Biden's bank account from the owner of Burisma. That would be indisputable, except all from the biggest left-wing hacks, which is probably most of them anyways. And that seems, if this is true, that this person made that up, that part of the story is gone. It is. Now, I still contend that everything else I've said about Burisma, we could publicly see is true. We know, for example, that Joe Biden issued the quid pro quo. We know that it ended up benefiting Burisma and its owner Zolchevsky and his son's business. We absolutely know that. We know his son was getting money. We know his son was lobbying for Burisma. We know that he still hasn't been charged with lying with Burisma. We know that the laptop that showed a lot of this information was accurate. We have the testimony from Tony Bobolinsky, who was the business partner, who brought receipts and shows all this is accurate. But that doesn't change the fact that I said it would have been a huge deal, and it was a huge deal if this story was true that was being said. So we'll see. It still could be true, but right now I would be bad faith if I said I can't comment on this. And I want people to know this. I might not be right about everything, and there are stories that break, and I violate my rule all the time. For example, one rule is when there's like a mass shooting or something, always be careful because there's almost always misinformation that comes out first. Sometimes I violate that rule. I'll see the person's name that allegedly did it or their picture, and then I'll comment on it, and then maybe that turns out to not be the case. So I'm not perfect. I'll fully admit that. But at least I'll come on and I'll talk about stories that I may have got wrong or that are difficult or that, there's cases that don't look good or evidence that comes up that doesn't look good for people that I support. I'll talk about them. I'm not going to be someone like all of the left-wingers you see that have ignored the Her report, which we're going to be debating tonight, that will ignore it and hope that the news cycle changes so I don't have to deal with things that are difficult. So I wanted to get that out there, wanted everyone to know, and we'll see where this goes from here. All right. Psy Guy, thank you, says, hopes the dog visit went well. The dog visit did not go well. It's kind of a bummer, actually. I'll talk about that briefly. So I did a little car stream on the way to the vet today, and it didn't go well. So I have this dog, Annabelle, and she started to get these fatty lumps on her. And she got some on her stomach, but then she got a really big one on her shoulder, and it started growing really fast. And so I took her to the vet a month ago or so, and they said that the ones on her stomach were loose, so they're probably fine, but the one on her shoulder was hard. And even though it's not causing her pain, it's something that they needed to surgically remove because they're worried it could be a tumor. And it looks cumbersome. It's hard. It's growing, and it's not good. The problem was she had some blood work that came back unfavorably. My understanding is this: when you have liver levels that are too high, certain things that are too high, it makes them very reticent to put you under with anesthesia, which clearly they'll need to do this surgery. So we took medication for a month. Annabelle's been on this medication, and today was her checkup. And if everything went well, we were supposed to go back next Thursday for the surgery. And unfortunately, things didn't go well. Her levels are actually worse. And so, and then in addition to that, they then scanned her gallbladder and her liver, and they're not saying that it's cancer, but there's some things to be worried about. And at her accelerated age, they're sort of worried about what they're able to do. So what we decided the best course of action was to go another 2 months with the medication we've been doing and some additional medication to see if we could go ahead and get that blood level at a level that they'd be comfortable doing this surgery with. If not, if 2 months go by, then we got to make a decision. Now, the good news is she doesn't seem to be in any pain. She's an old grump, but she's as lively as ever. Doesn't seem to be in pain, seems to be happy, but I don't know. It might just be a matter of making her comfortable. They're not telling me it's cancer. They're not saying, oh, she's only got 3 months to live. She may live another 4 or 5 years. I don't know. But to know that there's a serious growth on her that unfortunately we may be nothing to do about it, it sucks. It sucks. And Annabelle's special to me. All the dogs I've ever had in my life are special to me, but Annabelle's probably the most special dog I've ever had because she's 13. Literally my now wife, when we started dating, we basically got this dog together like after a few months of dating. So I've had this dog my entire relationship with my wife. I have another dog, Dorothy, who's also cool, but she's like 4, and Hank likes Dorothy, but Hank loves snuggling with Annabelle. Annabelle's her favorite, and so it'll be real tough, if she starts to decline. But it's life. It happens. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, woe is me. I'm a pretty lucky guy. And Annabelle's had a good life. I think she has. She's a great dog. She's really smart, which makes her ill-behaved sometimes because she's smarter than me. And I'm like the worst disciplinarian in the world. Like I should have took some classes on being a dog owner because I'm not ever going to hit my dog or anything like that. So I just kind of yell at her and she's like, yeah, what are you going to do about it? And then I'm weak. I'll be like, that's it for you, man. You know what? No treats today. And then like an hour later, I'm like, all right, here's a dog treat. And my wife's just like, you're terrible. You're just the worst. So, yeah, I contemplated whether or not talking about that, but someone mentioned my dog. That was the news. So, what I'm taking from it though is, she's not in pain. She's still running around. She had fun. We ran around and played in the yard when we got back. So, I'm going to make the most of my time with her. And hopefully it's another 6-7 years. So what if she has a big ugly bump on her shoulder? Who cares, right? At this point, she's out of the dating game anyway. So, so hopefully everything works out in the best way that it can with that. But thank you for asking. And a side note, it's clearly not the most important thing, but it gets expensive, man. It really does. The medications are expensive. The visits to the vet's expensive. The surgery is going to be expensive. And so it's like, I'm trying to get overtime in to work because she deserves it. Whatever chance we could give her, she deserves, absolutely. And that's what we're going to do. But within reason. Like if they're like, well, she needs an experimental $90,000 surgery, I'm probably out of luck. But, it's not like that. We're talking like $500, $600, $700 visits, starts to add up in this economy. So, but anyways, we'll get that out of sight, out of mind, and we'll do a little debating tonight. That'll be the plan. Yeah, I was worried about that. Not that I really care. Uh, Thank you so much, even though your shitty politics dude process on X for messaged me in there and asked me about Annabelle and possible money to it. Listen, here's the policy on donating money to me. I'll take your money. I'm a capitalist. I will. And I certainly could use it. However, I am extremely lucky. I might not be a wealthy person, but I'm not missing many meals. So I don't want anyone to ever feel guilt tripped into, oh, Rob's got to take his dog. Annabelle's going to get the help she needs regardless if I ever get one dime or anything. I really do appreciate the people that have reached out and asked about possibly donating to a fund to her, but she's going to be okay. I will take your money. I'm not saying I won't, but don't feel like that I'm not going to be okay. If you want to donate money to me because you like my content and stuff like that, I'm always down for that. But I don't want to be a person that comes on here and gives the impression that I'm kind of talking about financial hardships I'm having due to things that are out of my control, because I'm not having hardships that are out of my control to the point where I can't pay my bills and stuff like that. If it ever gets to that point, who knows what I'll do? You know, if there's a house fire or something like that, those are different things. But I don't know, it puts me in this weird moral place where I don't want people to think that I'm on here like, oh, my poor dog. Like, that's not what I'm doing. So I'm sorry. I know it's a little weird. I feel weird talking about that sort of stuff, but I do appreciate the people that have reached out and gave good wishes to her and asked about sending money to help with her care. I do appreciate that. I do, but please don't feel obligated at all. Now, if you think I'm an awesome streamer and you want to send money, by all means, I am an awesome streamer. Send money. So, all right, the debate tonight. So one of the things I was worried about, and it has nothing to do with anything really. We're going to call this guy JC. I screwed up the title of the show. His Twitter name's Arch Wokehammer, but then his Discord was like Lefty Jesus or something. And I was like, I don't want to call this guy Lefty Jesus. So he says he goes by like Big JC. I assume it's a reference to Jesus, whatever. We'll call him JC, that's fine, or J, whatever. But I try. Listen, this might be a shit show tonight. It might be. And I'm to blame sometimes. Sometimes I'm too aggro. I'm going to try to keep her level tonight. Keep it cool. I am. It's something that I'm working on, you know. But I honestly do try, especially if it's an interaction with a new person that I've never dealt with. I try to be as respectful as possible going into that. And that means giving them an opportunity to promote their channel and making sure, you know, that I'm even-handed when I'm introducing them and things of that nature. So it bugs me when I do something little stupid like I screw up their name on the title of the video. That bugs me because I'm like, you know, because for some people, it's like I'm going on Tim Pool's show March 1st. That's a big opportunity for me. I think I deserve to go on Tim Pool's show in that I think that I bring something to the table. I'm good at what I do. You know, don't get me wrong. But I'd be kidding you if I didn't tell you that's going to introduce me to a great large audience that normally doesn't see me. Even though I consider myself a small streamer, it certainly could be the case that there are people out there that think coming on to talk to me is a big opportunity. Maybe they only stream to 5 people instead of the 50 I'm streaming to now, and you know. So I don't want to, you know, screw up their introduction or their name or anything like that. So I didn't know. I should have reached out to the person and asked them. So I'll apologize to them when they get here. But don't name yourself something like Lefty Jesus Christ or something. You know that. Geez, is that true, Halen? That's insanity. If I promoted my OnlyFans, that's private though. Here's a question: can you do OnlyFans that's non-pornographic? Like, are there people that do OnlyFans and it's just like Substack, where it's just like, hey, pay to see me do a video every day? I don't know. Or is their brand purely pornography? I wouldn't do it anyways because I think that the connections to the pornographic materials probably immoral and not something that I want to be attached to. People do it. I just didn't know. I have no clue. I can honestly say I've never been to an OnlyFans page. So, was this guy on a panel with me in EOD? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever interacted with him. I've done a lot of panels with a lot of people, and honestly, I forget. It's been, there's been several times when I've been like, hey, nice to meet you, and people have been like, oh, actually, we've met before. As we're waiting, so again, the debate's going to be on the double standard of her lack of indictment versus Trump being indicted with the classified document cases, and maybe it'll branch out. I have to put a hard limit on this at 3 hours, so I have to be done by 11 o'clock tonight. Hopefully it's sooner than that. So the debate hopefully will be anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, preferably much shorter than 3 hours. We'll see how it goes. We'll try to find a wrapping up point once we get to the hour mark. If it goes into 2 and the third hour, so be it. But if there's a good place to wrap up, because one of the problems with me is I could branch out and go in 50 different directions. So, yeah, I like doing panels with you too, EOD. Yeah, I remember the Twitter space. That was fun. I talked about this in my car stream earlier, but it's worth talking about because I mentioned it last night. So I was talking about some stupid, ridiculous beef with Tiberius D. I don't like Tiberius D. I don't think he's a very talented person or very intelligent. I think that, he's kind of crappy. But having said that, I don't wish him ill. He's probably a nice guy in real life. I hope he does great. I don't care. Has a family. I know he's talked to me about his family, so always remember that about anyone you might dislike. They have a family that loves them, most likely. So, but, I don't wish any ill on him. Anyways, I mentioned last night a little, whatever with him. And then someone mentioned to me that him and Conor, counterpoints, went to the Progressive Victory thing in Cincinnati that Brianna Wu put on with Destiny and Dylan Burns. Basically, it's a progressive PAC that has this idea that they're going to start basically working with streamers, left-wing streamers, to do canvassing and things to increase turnout for voting. And it's actually a smart idea. Now, do you have to fill out certain paperwork and stuff if you're a PAC and you're giving out these monies for campaigns? I don't know. I don't know that level of it. I'm not going to pretend to. But it is a smart idea, and conservatives should do it as well, but they won't. They'll put out yard signs in yards, and that's what they'll get to. Anyways, it was shocking to me that I kind of brushed it off. I was like, because I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't have a problem. As much as I'm disgusted by the Democrats, and I think that it's very serious, the corruption of both parties, at the top level of both parties, the establishment, I think it's serious. I could separate that and still be friends with people that are left-wingers, that are Democrats. I do it in my personal life. And if you're a streamer and you're the type of person that wants to meet up with other streamers in real life, and you say, I'm right-wing, but I like Wick, seems like a nice guy, or Stardust seems cool, or hey, I wouldn't mind hanging out with Destiny or Dylan Burns, more power to you. I don't give a shit. I don't care at all. I'm not even gonna say that's, how dare you? You shouldn't be doing that as a Republican. I don't care. But if you're taking money from a progressive PAC and helping them win elections, you ain't a Republican. You're not. Or you care more about the money than your political principles. And that's what Conor did. He got paid as a rhetorical consultant for not just Democrats, but a PAC to make Democrats more progressive. And he's helping them with their rhetoric increase their participation, share of the Democratic Party, win elections. In the thread, we were talking about it, he called himself a Republican. You're not a Republican. Or you care. Here's things that I could accept. You ready? Here's something. Yeah, Rob, I think both parties suck. I don't really give a shit, and I care more about my family and making money to benefit them than I care about either political party. I can accept that. It's honest. Okay. Or, I'm no longer a Republican. I feel the party's left me. I think that they're ran by Donald Trump and he's corrupt, and therefore I want the Republicans to lose. So I'm no longer a Republican. Okay. But you can't say, I'm a Republican. You're not. There's a separate question of, are you a conservative? Because Republican's a party. It's something identifiable. You are Republican. We could argue about whether or not people you think are rhinos are Republicans, Republican in name only. That's one argument. But if you're actively paid by the Democrats to help Democrats win, you ain't a Republican. It's that simple. Or you care more about money than your political principles. And the only reason I bring this up, does that mean Conor's a really terrible person? That's not what I'm saying. Still seems likable, seems like a family guy. Okay, whatever. I think he's terribly misguided. Whatever, though. But what blows my mind is the hill that so many people I was arguing with on X to the wee hours of the morning last night, they're willing to die on this hill. Tiberius D said, I've heard a lot of things about people accusing Republicans of not really being Republican, but this is beyond the pale. Tiberius D's like, I didn't like it when they said Mitch McConnell was a rhino because he supported Ukraine and the border bill. I didn't care for that, but I could live with it. But when robnoerr said, if Mitch McConnell was being paid by Democrats to help Democrats win, he wouldn't really be a Republican. Well, that's a step too far. I can't handle that. What? And all these people, one after another, are like, and the shit they're saying, it just blows your mind. Like, they're like, oh, isn't George Will a conservative? Okay. Is he working with Democrats, getting paid by Democrats to help Democrats win elections? Well, then he's not a Republican, or he cares more about the money than political principles. That was Cypher from Crowdsourced Politics that said that to me, and he goes, oh, I see you're focused on the word Republican, so I win the argument. Right, that's the entire debate. Are you really a Republican if you are literally working paid by their opposition to help them win elections? It's nonsensical. And what gets me is I don't understand the people that are willing to sacrifice their credibility for some point like this that means nothing. Why would I ever trust anything these people say again? Oh, what do you mean just because he's working with Democrats to help Democrats win elections, including down ballots, that he's not really a Republican? That's ridiculous. What are you talking about? What? Then are you a conservative? Look, I don't have a problem saying, like John Burke, for example, I think he's wrong, but he's like, I'm not going to vote for Trump. Does that mean John Burke's not a Republican? I don't think so. If John Burke said, I'm not going to vote for Trump and I'm going to vote for Biden, maybe still wouldn't say that doesn't mean he's a Republican. It's worse, but whatever. But if John Burke said, I'm not going to vote for Trump and I'm going to take a job getting paid by progressive Democrats to help progressive Democrats beat Trump and Republicans down ballot, he ain't no Republican. Or he cares more about the money than political principles. Simple. Easy stuff. Are you really a conservative? Being a conservative and being like, I don't like the direction the Republicans are going. I don't think they're really conservative. 2 points, fine. I would argue that's been the way long before Trump. I thought Ron Paul was a conservative, which means I did not think John McCain was, or Mitt Romney, or Paul Ryan, or Mitch McConnell. I didn't think those people were conservative. I like more of a libertarian type conservatism. Conservatism, one of the things it means to me is fiscal conservatism. Fiscal responsibility. Have the Republicans been fiscally conservative? Trump isn't either, don't get me wrong. So yeah, well, it's accurate to say I don't think Trump's the most conservative guy in the world. Was Bush? Was Romney? Was McCain? Were you working with Democrats to beat them saying these aren't real Republicans? I mean, come on. And how could you, it's one thing to say that I'm going to take my ball and go home. I don't support any of these teams. But if you're conservative, the diametric opposite to that is progressive. And you're helping not just Democrats, but you're helping the Democrats, a Democratic PAC whose stated goal is to make Democrats more progressive. Like, you're a conservative, and the way you're showing that conservatism is, I'm going to help the people diametrically opposed to me. I'm going to take a job with them and help them. Absolutely insane. 1 second here. If this guy doesn't matter. if you could hear me, JC, if you're listening, I'm going to go to the restroom real quick. I will be right back, but just get this out of the way. That way I don't have to go once the debate starts. So I'm going to put my intro on with the music, but I will be right back. One thing I want to say to the audience, we'll get started here. I think JC's ready to go. I don't know why this happens, but sometimes when I'm talking to someone through Discord, my volume on my channel diminishes. So if that happens, I'll be looking at the chat to see if someone can tell me that, because I obviously am not going to notice that. So it'll like take my volume from like a 90 down to like a 60. So just let me know if that happens. So we'll get started here. All right. Video call. You lose me here visually.
He is departing visual.
There we go. I'm coming. Maybe. There we go.
Hello!
There we go. Oh my gosh, you're really loud.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, I didn't mean that. Like, I just meant is blowing out a little there. Let me see if I can go. Stream, no chat.
God, your camera is so much nicer than mine.
What are you working with?
I'm embarrassed.
Just like your
I don't want
default.
to say.
Dude, don't be.
It, it's
This
like a Logitech fake cheap thing, yeah.
That's what I'm using. I'm using a Logitech Brio, but I used to use, if I'm at work streaming, I use a Logitech C920. It's not bad. I think your problem's probably majoritarily your lighting, if I had to guess.
I dwell in darkness. What can I say?
Okay, I'm gonna. Do I sound good in your end? I'm gonna lower your volume a little on my end, but I assure you, everyone will be able to hear you. You just sound
For sure.
really
Yeah,
loud.
all
So.
the no, yeah. I fucked with my mic settings for a little while, and this is what we ended up
It's
with.
clear. I can understand you. It was just
Well,
really
that's
loud.
good.
Yeah. So it was just really loud. So yeah, feel free to record this or whatever. I'm just gonna, yeah, I'll just live stream it. I'll clip it. We're live now, so
Hell yeah.
I thought to start, it seems fair if you could introduce yourself, tell people where to find you if you want, and things like that. So if they like what you hear,
Sure.
or if they hate what you hear, they can come shake their fist at you.
Ah,
Go
I
ahead.
love hate watchers. Well, I go by right now. I go by the Big JC. Rob, we've actually debated once before when I went under the handle Lefty Jesus.
I remember.
It
What
was
was
a
the topic?
long time. It was a long time ago. It was about Vosh rhetoric.
You're not the guy
That's
that
just,
was boot. No, that's not you. I remember
no.
talking to you. I do remember that conversation.
Yeah, the apartment that I talked to you in has since burned to the ground.
It's terrible.
So,
Did you?
yeah.
Everyone safe? Animals and
Oh
everything safe?
yeah. No, nothing like that. I was talking to my partner about that earlier. I was like, I think the last time I talked to Rob, we were in the apartment. She's like, oh yeah. But anyways, now I go by the Big JC. I'm a leftist. I stream infrequently, although with my new changed work schedule, that should be updating soon. I cover politics. I cover Warhammer. That's probably what a lot of people online know me for right now, and that's sorry for the confusion with the Twitter handle. But yeah, so
Are
you
you
can find
just
me
are
at.
you just counterpoints with a wig on? Is that cover
Hey, I'm
politics?
not. No,
Going full
no.
lefty here.
I know. I was gonna. This is a Counterpoint's alt account. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I'm on Twitch. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Kick. All under the Big JC. If you see a picture of Jesus Chad with red glowing eyes, you know that you found me.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and yeah. So if, I'll just explain how this came about. We were just talking on Twitter. That's basically how this came about. I thought that many left wingers that I had streamed with before, particularly that had talked about one specific piece of evidence with Trump that he's on tape saying that he had classified material, and that was a smoking gun that he committed a crime. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
they went silent when we have evidence of Joe Biden doing that, and so I'd been commenting that no one was talking about it. And to your credit, you were like, I'll come on and talk to you about it. And I had work. This was the first day that worked for us both. So here we are. That's basically the topic of conversation in general is just, was there a double standard in the charging of Trump and not the charging of Biden? And wherever we
Yeah.
go from, it's not like we have a moderator and an official debate topic, but that's generally what we've agreed to talk about. Anything you wanted to add?
No, I just as close to on topic as we could stay would be
Yeah,
preferred.
that's fine. So, let's just start with that. Are you one of the people that thought that it was a smoking gun piece of evidence when the indictment said of Trump that he had said to a journalist who didn't have a classified clearance, hey, this, I could have declassified this, it's secret, basically I shouldn't be showing you this. Did you think that was proof that he had intent to mishandle classified documents?
Yes, I think that the audio recordings, both of which I think serve as and his actions as well, with regards to how he handled, tried to hide, and even ordered people to destroy some of the classified materials that he was in possession of. I think all of these would be indicative towards his willfulness to break the law and
So
his
let's-
knowledge of the illegality of his actions.
So let's take this step by step because we could say there are several steps that we think could be more or less likely to show willfulness or guilt when it comes to Biden or Trump. So let's say just that specifically. You said that you think that that's smoking gun evidence. So let's, for the sake of argument, say that we had nothing in the indictment about Trump concealing evidence, ordering his people to move boxes, nothing like that. The indictment just said Trump mishandled classified documents, and we have him on tape saying basically this is a classified document, reading it or showing it to people that didn't have a clearance. Would that be evidence enough to charge him?
Probably, yeah. Under the as I understand the Espionage Act, yeah.
Okay. All right. Given that, Why don't you think that Biden doing the same thing except worse 3 times isn't reason to charge him?
Because I don't think that you could prove willful intent with Biden, whereas we have plenty of evidence to indicate that towards Trump.
But you just said, without any of the other stuff, without any of the not cooperating, handing stuff back, this alone, just being on tape saying, this is classified stuff, I shouldn't be showing it to you, but look, it's here. You said that enough was enough to charge him. So with Biden, just in case the people don't know what the Her report said, it was multiple times. It was actually worse than what Trump did, because not only does he say it's probably classified, he actually skips over it sometimes when he's reading it, which shows that he knows it's classified, but then other times reads it. And then worse than that, Trump just waved papers around. Biden actually then proceeds to read on tape multiple times the classified material. So can you explain to me why, even if Trump didn't have all of these other things about not retaining information or not handing it back, you still think that that tape alone would be evidence of willfulness and of a crime, but it's not the case with Joe Biden?
Yeah, sure. So let's go through this kind of point by point here. So the first thing you said was that Biden was obviously worse. I of course disagree with this, but we can get into why specifically. A big part of when it comes to the proving a violation of the Espionage Act, if you actually get into the meat of 18 USC, it says to prove unauthorized retention of national defense information. This is actually page 178 of the Her report, if you want to follow along. To prove unauthorized retention of national defense information under 18 USC 793, which is what Trump was indicted under. The government must show 1, the defendant had unauthorized possession of a document, writing, or note. 2, the document, writing, or note related to the national defense. And 3, the defendant willfully retained the document, writing, or note and failed to deliver it to an employee or officer entitled to receive it. So I think that when it comes to willfulness, that's going to be really our key operative term here. If you recall from our Twitter conversation, there was someone else who was trying to cite case law precedent. I actually looked into that. So the case that they were referring to was the United States versus Bryan, which, as I understand it, had something to do with firearms permits. But essentially, what was established there is a pretty simple standard for willfulness that's been recycled and reused many, many times since the case, which is just you have to prove that the individual knew that they were breaking the law. I think that with Trump, this is pretty easy. I think that saying, I shouldn't be showing you this to a jury is pretty indicative towards his state of mind with regards to his conscious knowledge of his illegal actions. I don't think that, from what I understand, from what I've read of the Her report, and from what I understand of the what Biden shared and what everything like that, I don't think that there's any evidence that you could point to that he willfully gave up classified information. Simply sharing classified information is not enough to be charged under the Espionage Act. You have to show a willful intent to do so.
He admitted 3 times that it was classified or probably classified as he was reading it. He skipped over.
Actually, if you'll recall that section of the Her report, there were 3 times that he read classified information, but there were multiple times where he skipped over portions that he presumed were classified.
Right.
So, as my assessment would go, he was conscious of the fact that there was classified information present in the notebooks. This was the notebooks that he was reading to his ghostwriter for the publishing of his 2017 memoir. He was cognizant of the knowledge, or cognizant rather, of the classified material that was present within those notebooks. So much so that he was able to say, I shouldn't be reading this part to you because I know that this is confidential. And then simply avoided doing that in the future. I would find it far more likely that, such is the case with some of the information that was on like Hillary's email server, for example, it's possible that the information wasn't classified at the time that he received it, but became retroactively classified since the time that he received it. And so proving the intentionality to break the law there is going to be the operative thing. And I think that him saying, I shouldn't be showing you this, or I shouldn't be reading this to you, and so I won't for certain passages, but omitting that in others, I think is more indicative towards him just not having a full knowledge of what he's in possession of. Whereas with Trump, we know that he was pulling out maps, he was pulling out battle plans and showing them to people, saying, I could have declassified this, I didn't, I shouldn't be showing you this, don't get too close, which is my personal favorite part of the indictment. I think there's plenty of evidence to show the mind state of Trump when he was knowingly, and if we get into
Okay, you got to give me a chance to talk at some point. I think I'm being incredibly generous here. So, first off, given what you already said, that the evidence of Trump on without the retention and stuff, or the not in cooperation was enough to handle him, you already lose the debate because we clearly have evidence that that's what Biden's done, right? Now, you're trying to parse out. You're trying to parse out. Like, for example, I'll get to the exact quotes, but there's an exact quote in the last section where it's talking about why they're not charging Biden with reading to the ghostwriter, where it says basically this. On the last time, Biden was like, oh, this is probably classified. But then he showed it. He didn't just read it. He showed it. He said to the person it's probably classified, then physically showed it to the writer. Now, he did this several times. What you're saying actually, to me, makes the situation worse, because here's what happened. Biden can't claim ignorance that he didn't know that there was classified material in the notebook, because if at times he specifically skipped over what he thought to be classified, that would prove that he knew there was classified material in the notebook. When he later says, this is probably classified, and then reads it anyways to the writer, he can't claim I didn't know it was classified. That's evidence. Now, think about this. Let's say that I have a 50-page notebook, right? And I know that on 30 of the pages there's classified material. I know it. But I'm still chancing it by reading stuff, and I end up reading classified stuff. The idea that I didn't intended that is absurd. The document itself is a classified document by the nature that it has classified material within it. Now, you're right that the Bryan standard separates and says that we only need simple willfulness is what it qualifies as. Because the argument will be that when you're reading verbally, you need to go more than simple willfulness. Simple willfulness basically just means you knew you weren't supposed to do it. You knew it were against the law to have the classified documents. There is a separate standard that you also had to know that the information could be damaging to U.S. national security. Simple willfulness says you don't need that standard. You don't. So The question is, did Biden know that this stuff was classified? Yes. He knew that it was classified. He knew the stuff in the notebook was classified, as he admits multiple times. At one point, he even says it's probably classified, then does literally what you said proves Trump's guilt. Literally shows it to his ghostwriter. So given that passage, if that's true, he said that this is probably classified, and then he physically shows it to his ghostwriter, how isn't that doing exactly what you're accusing Trump of doing?
So as I just said, as I understand it, there was nothing to indicate that he said, this is classified, I shouldn't show you this, and then proceeded to show them. As I understood it, he skipped over sections he knew were classified and then shared classified information.
Okay, so you want me to find the exact quote is what you need?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me find it. I don't have this saved. My damn mouse frustrates me to no end. So let's go to the part where... This document's killing me. You acknowledge that he knew material within it was classified.
Of course.
You acknowledge that he read classified.
I will also concede to you immediately that regardless of the willfulness standard that's being applied here, I think that both individuals and many individuals in our government have been highly negligent with their handling of classified materials. And regardless of whether or not Biden is criminally liable for the way that he negligently handled those materials, I think that those procedures regarding what documents are allowed to be taken out of where should probably be addressed very soon in order to prevent any of this kind of thing from happening again.
I do not give a shit about that at all. My entire contention is that this is a clear double standard, and this is an argument that I see people on the left make to appear magnanimous all the time, right? Which is what they'll say. They'll say, "Oh, maybe charge both of them," or "Yeah, technically, what both did were wrong."
I don't think both should be charged.
They're trying to interfere in the election. So, for example, the Smith case is going out of its... Would you agree with this? This is sort of outside the scope of what we agreed to talk about. But Smith's doing everything possible to rush this case before the election, correct?
I'm not familiar with the Smith case.
Well, the Smith case is the indictment of Trump that we're talking about.
Oh,
the classified documents case.
The Jack Smith, got it.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that you would agree that they're constantly filing motions trying to get this case as fast as possible.
I'm pretty sure it just got delayed, right, until after the election?
Right, and no, that's not true. There are things that got delayed, but Smith's not happy about it and keeps filing motions. And basically,
all right, but did it get delayed? Is it presently delayed? That's what I'm asking.
You said it got delayed till after the election. I'm unaware that that's the case. In fact, I know that's not the case. Right? Okay, there was what Trump's doing is he's taking things to the Supreme Court. Like, for example, one of his defenses is, as president, I had immunity from any of these sorts of crimes, right? I have criminal immunity, not just civil immunity, that would apply once I leave office as well, right? And Jack Smith's arguing that's not the case. This is something that's going to be brought in front of the Supreme Court. And so that's going to cause a delay because the question is, can we even proceed to a trial? Jack Smith is going out of his way to try to make sure that this is adjudicated before the election. Do you agree with that?
Didn't they just rule that Trump doesn't have presidential immunity? And can be. This was with regards to plotting to overturn the 2020 election, so it's not quite the same.
Right,
but didn't they just rule that he doesn't have presidential immunity in that regard?
What was ruled was...
He wasn't president when he committed the crimes that he was indicted for.
It was a lower court case, right? But the question is, will it be brought to the Supreme Court, and will that cause some sort of delay? Jack Smith, over and over, has been filing motions, attempting to expedite the speed of this trial in ways that he hasn't done with any other January 6th offender or anyone else. Would you agree that he is attempting, the evidence shows strongly that he's attempting to get this case tried before the election?
It's possible, and I could understand why, but I don't know how you could prove that.
Well, it's against DOJ policy, and basically everyone who's looking at this understands it. In fact, the most recent Jack Smith filing specifically said that it's for the interest of the American people to have a speedy trial. Well, that's not true.
I don't think it's against DOJ policy to attempt to remove a undemocratic actor.
No, that's not what's against DOJ policy is allowing politics in any way, shape, or form to influence your decisions on indictments and how you proceed with the case. Right? In other words, the DOJ or any other, the FBI and all these institutions, they're not allowed to factor in politics when they're deciding on how to proceed with charges and how to proceed with the criminal case. They can't do that. That's expressly written. And Jack Smith is saying, oh, no, it's in the interest of the American people. We have to do this as fast as possible. But that's not what the idea of a speedy trial is. The idea of the speedy trial is for the defendant. The defendant has the right to a speedy trial. Our entire system's set up to give the benefit of the doubt until the defendant, innocent until proven guilty. So the defendant has a bunch of rights, like the right to look at evidence that's going to be used against them. Jack Smith keeps fighting that. The right to adhere any sort of defense and any sort of objections to the trial that could reasonably be heard. As a former president, there's clearly things, and this is an unprecedented case, that he's going to bring up that's going to require being heard in courts. But Jack Smith continually says, no. We have to rush through this. And the reason is for politics. So the idea hold
on, because your initial claim was that Jack Smith is trying to expedite this ahead of the election, and now you're saying that he's trying to rush through it. I think those are two distinct things.
No,
I think that if you believe that someone like Trump, who has made multiple anti-democratic statements and has put national secrets directly at risk, I think that all of these factors combined, not only that, but tried to take advantage of a riot on January 6th and turn it into an insurrection. I think that when all of these things are combined, I would understand the motivation to want to make sure that, especially if this person is slated to be the Republican candidate for 2024, you want to make sure that they're at least cleared of all criminal charges, right? When you want to, if you don't think Trump is guilty, why wouldn't you want to take it to court and get him exonerated as quickly as possible?
Are you innocent? So if you're accused of crimes, you should be charged and immediately, the next day, go to court because you're innocent? It's okay if they spy on you and stuff? This is stupid. This is an authoritarian argument. The argument that, well, if you really think that you're innocent, then you shouldn't mind. You should want a court case. That's nonsensical.
He's already been indicted.
Please, but what you said, it kind of shows the game here. My entire argument is that there's a double standard. Now, you might argue that the double standard is good because Jack Smith thinks that what Trump did is a danger to the republic and blah, blah, blah. That's fine. You could think that. And that's secretly...
I contest the existence of the double standard to begin with. I was actually about to ask you
if you let me speak, I'll get to it. So you've already said... So the fact that you're basically saying, well, if Trump's innocent, we should. It's in his interest. And because the implications are he tried to overthrow the government in this insurrection, all that, the American people, right? That's what you're saying. The American people before the election should hear. That's what you're saying, right?
I think that if the indictment is correct in its pursuance of justice, I think that yes, it should. I think the case should be heard as soon as possible.
Okay.
I don't understand why you would want someone who has felony convictions hanging in the air to be elected president of the United States, regardless of party.
Nonetheless, all of that is counter to the idea of your wants and Jack Smith's wants, and you thinking that this is real important for politics is irrelevant and actually unlawful for someone like Jack Smith to do. Jack Smith, like like all prosecutors, like all judges, like all law enforcement, also are held to certain standards. They do not get to violate those procedures because they truly believe what they're doing is important. My argument is, please let me finish. My argument is that this shows is what you're suggesting right now is further proof of the double standard. So they're not allowing Trump to have the normal procedures that a normal defendant would have, which is guaranteed in our Constitution. Instead, they're saying we need to rush this along, hurry up and expedite this because we have political matters that we think are important, which they're not allowed to do. Jack Smith's mindset is one of that of he truly believes Trump's a danger to the society and he's going to come hell or high water, bring these charges and try to keep Trump from being elected. That's the whole point. That's what he's doing, as you've basically just admitted. That's different than what happens when we're looking at people like Hillary Clinton, when we're looking at people like Joe Biden. Instead, what happens is when they do analogous things like also reading classified material to a writer, what we're told is, oh, but he's an old man. It's just an innocent mistake. This doesn't show willfulness. See, they lay out the defense for Joe Biden. This whole document's rife with that. They're like, well, technically, he obviously willfully retained this information, which technically meets the metrics of a crime. But people like him. He seems just like a doddering old man with memory issues. And then with Trump, he's a threat to democracy. Not only are we bringing charges, but we'll violate our own procedures by making sure to expedite it for political reasons as quick as possible. And you could respond, and then I'll read you the section from the page if you want.
Sure. So as I want to get to eventually what you actually think the double standard is, because from my perspective, these cases are so incomparable outside of the retention of classified materials that trying to imply some sort of double standard is completely disingenuous. For one, Biden, Hillary, and even Mike Pence, when it came to their retention of classified materials, all cooperated with NARA when it came to No, it's quite relevant.
If you don't mind me interjecting.
Hold on. No, I'm not going to let you interject because it's actually quite relevant. When we're talking about willfulness, which is what you need to establish in order to criminally indict someone, you need to have evidence towards that, and little evidence towards the contrary. I would say that cooperating willingly with the National Records Administration and returning your documents without a fuss, without them having to harass you for over half a year, without them finally having to send in the FBI to raid your property to get back documents they know you still have, I would say that not doing any of those things would actually indicate that you are not willfully breaking the law.
Okay, so first off, you already gave the game away with the very first question I asked, that you said even had Trump returned these documents and he not been charged with it, you still think that the audio recording is enough to charge him. So now you're switching your standard. You're saying, but the fact that Trump didn't hand back this stuff, but Biden did. So you've already moved the goalpost on what you believe.
Well, the recording that you gave me as a specific example where you said, I'm not supposed to have this, I think would indicate a willfulness when it comes to retaining the documents, which is part of what USC 890 or 790.
That's great.
Or 18, yeah.
That's great. So then that has nothing to do. So let's look at that in a vacuum. You think that's enough based on what he said on tape? That's enough. So the idea of voluntarily giving stuff back is irrelevant to whether or not you think charges should be levied. Let's read from. We'll start on page 244 and we'll go a couple pages.
Hold on. You're not. Please do not straw man me. Actually, as I've articulated twice now, the willfulness to cooperate with the returning of the documents or the non-willfulness to willingness to return those documents would be a contention point as to whether or not someone was intentionally breaking the law when it comes to establishing it to a jury.
So let's clear it up. So your argument would be you're standing by your initial statement that had Trump voluntarily given the stuff back. And
that was not my initial statement. That's
okay, so then your statement is if he just wasn't charged with the obstruction, this tape alone would be enough to convict him.
Let me steel man it for you. If Trump had immediately after leaving office, if he had boxes or whatever, and he vaguely knew there were classified things in there, and he started going through them, and he found these classified, like, I don't know, a map that would indicated a plan of attack for a certain country. And then the second he saw that, he went, oh, crap, I'm not supposed to have this. Contacted NARA and had it returned to them immediately. No, I don't think he should be indicted. Okay,
so then you were erroneous when you first said that whether or not he gave the material back, that it was enough to indict him just from that. You're now saying that tape wouldn't have been enough to indict if after he did that tape, he said, oh shit, I should give these documents back.
It depends on the time frame.
Okay.
I think that like if it's the next day, then sure.
Okay,
But
fine.
like,
Let's
but I
fine.
think that
Let's
I
go
think
with
that
that.
period-
Fine, we'll go with that. And so now let's read a little. You can follow along. We're on page 244, the last paragraph, right? You ready?
Sure, just give me a second to catch up.
All right.
My
We're gonna read a
PDF
couple
isn't
pages.
accurately paged. You said 244?
244.
Yeah, I have to manually scroll here.
Oh, so it'll be 248 on if you're on the same document as me, because you know it has.
You have the page numbers too. All right. No,
You know
I'm
what I
almost
mean?
there. You're
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
It starts with section C. The evidence does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Right? Got it?
Yes.
Okay. You see where it says at 3 times?
The evidence does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Biden willfully disclosed national
Keep going
defense
down
information.
paragraph.
Yep.
At least 3 times. You see it?
These are times Biden.
Okay,
first
let me
two
read.
incidents
Ready?
involved the,
I'm going to
hold
read.
on. Yeah,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
read
Go
this.
ahead,
I'm
read
going to
it.
read. Okay, thank you. At least 3 times, Mr. Biden read classified notes from national security meetings to Zwanzer, that's his ghostwriter, nearly verbatim.
Yep.
Now, brief pause. Trump never read the classified material he's accused of having, right?
No, he just physically showed it to people.
Yeah,
so
he
they
like
could
waved
get a
it in
good
the
look
air.
at
They
it.
didn't get to read the words or anything. Got it.
No, he didn't wave it in the air. He was showing it to people.
That's not true. The indictment doesn't say that he brought it up close and they were looking at it. He showed. Go ahead, show me where in the indictment it says it.
I don't think that it specifically says
Right,
he
that's
shoved
right.
it in all of their faces.
Right.
But to you, is that either he directly shoved it in their faces, or it's he waved it off in a distance so nobody could actually make out what was on it?
It looked like
he
what
was
he
telling,
said was
during
this,
the phone
like
call.
he
He was
said
telling, or
this.
during the recording, he was
See
telling
this?
people, look at this, look at this,
Look at this. You see this? That's classified. It probably shouldn't show. That's secret. I should. That's what it looked like he did. He didn't read from it. They couldn't read the letters on it, read the words. That's what I'm saying. There's no accusation that they read the material that was on the document. Now, unlike Joe
But
Biden,
they don't have to, you understand they don't have to read it for him to be indicted.
I understand
on a
the
violation
point
of the
I'm
Espionage
making. The
Act.
point I'm making, if we're comparing the two, Joe Biden not only showed by having the documents similar to Trump that were classified right in front of the writer, but then he proceeded to read verbatim the classified material.
Where does it say that he showed it to him? Because you said that several
We'll
times.
get to it. You ready? Well, first off, unless you think that Biden was like this reading it.
I mean, for all I know, as I understand it, these conversations were recorded. For all I know, this could have been over the phone.
No, it was in person. Now, we'll get to it. Ready? I'm going to keep reading. The first 2 incidents involved the same notebook passage. On February 16, 2017, remember that date, 2017. Just keep that in the back of your mind, right? For something you said earlier. Mr. Biden appeared to explain to Zwanzer that a notebook entry related to a long meeting on the Security Council was probably classified. Then he reads it. Let me repeat that. You said he didn't say that it was classified. Let me repeat that. Mr. Biden appeared to explain to Zwanzer that a notebook entry related to the long meeting on the Security Council was probably classified. Now, brief pause here. You just said the reason that Trump was guilty was because he said, I know this is classified, I shouldn't be reading it. But you said Biden didn't say that. That's a lie. Biden did say that.
No, I said that the reason that Trump was indicted, the reason that they actually sought charges against Trump and didn't against Biden is because they were able to build a much better case on Trump's willfulness to break the law. Which hold on, constituted a lot more than just the one incident where he showed people classified information. It was also the months-long slog that NARA tried to go through before finally sending in the fucking FBI to bust down the doors of Mar-a-Lago and get back their shit. There's a lot more that goes into establishing this willful retention of documents than simply he showed people a map one time and said I shouldn't have this. That was a part of it, certainly, but there's a much larger case here.
Okay, so now can everyone see what happens? Let me explain what my opponent's done here. So I strategically started off the conversation talking about things in a vacuum, right? Because one of the things that had occurred over and over with these lefties, they said the mere fact that Trump was on tape saying this proof smoking gun that he committed a crime. So that's when I asked my opponent. He said, yes, that in its own right, even without the idea of whether or not he handed back documents or not, that would be enough to charge him. I say, okay, that's what Biden did. He said Biden never said the material was classified, so that's different. Now we see that Biden did say the material was classified. Then he tries to wiggle out of it. He says, but yes, there's a bunch of other things. Now there are all these other things. So his initial statement of this action alone by Trump was enough to charge. Now that we see that Biden committed this action, he does what these people that defend the double standards always do. They say, but these two situations aren't directly analogous. There's other differences, and now that's what we're going to talk about. One of the reasons. Now, wait. I'm gonna even go further in proving how ridiculous. You just said in your clarification. So now you clarified, and you said actually, had Trump given the documents back after he made those comments, it maybe would have meant he didn't get charged, but it depended on the timetable. That's what you said, right?
with respect, Rob, I don't appreciate you're trying to rhetorically corner me and nail me on very like off top. I think if you examine both of these, if we could have a good faith discussion about the details of both the indictment and the report, I think it's pretty obvious what the conclusions that should be drawn.
Now I'll ask you again. You said that one of the reasons that Trump maybe wouldn't have been charged after this tape if he returned the documents within a reasonable time.
Well, I should hold on. We should preface all of this, by the way, by saying I'm not a legal expert, and neither are you. I'm a layperson.
I'll ask the question.
I'm giving my own conjecture from my minimal understanding of the legal system.
Great. I'll ask the question. I'll ask the question again. I'll ask the question a third time. You said that it would have been a crime if Trump said this on tape unless he gave the material back in a reasonable time frame. That would imply if he didn't give it back in a reasonable time frame, he could still be charged, correct?
No.
So then why did you make the caveat of reasonable time frame?
Because I found it ridiculous that you were trying to pigeonhole me into one specific point when you are well aware that the Trump indictment consists of many more pieces of evidence that constitute his willfulness to obstruct and retain those documents.
So my opponent's being bad faith. I'll tell you why he said reasonable time.
Not being bad faith. How dare you?
Please, you are, and I'll explain why.
This coming from you,
if you're
that's
not
very
being
rich.
okay, so you're not being bad faith. So your explanation for why you just said. Let's further. You're not being bad faith.
If you want me to explain, let me explain.
No, I just let you explain. I just let you. I just let you explain. And so I'm going to re-ask the question because your explanation literally makes zero sense. You initially say the tape of Trump saying this is reason enough to charge him. Then when I say Biden said this too, then you change your stance. You're like, well, actually, there's more to it than that. For example, you did. You said, for example, had Trump given the stuff back, then maybe he wouldn't have been charged. And I said, oh, so if he gave it back, he wouldn't have been charged. You said, well, if it was within a reasonable time frame. Now, why didn't you just say, sure, if he gave it back at any point, then there wouldn't have been charges? Instead, you put that caveat of reasonable time frame because what you were trying, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to steal man. What you were trying to say is, obviously, he couldn't hold on to the documents for 4 years and then say, oh, and shit, you could have this back. That would be ridiculous.
He shouldn't have had them after he left office, period.
Fair enough.
Neither should Biden, which I already conceded to you. The difference being that Trump continued to withhold the documents, ordered people to move them, ordered some people to destroy some of those boxes, whereas Biden and the author immediately after the investigation was open, cooperated with every step of the special counsel, cooperated with every request, every subpoena that they issued.
All of that is completely irrelevant to what we're talking about right now.
No, it's very relevant.
What is happening is you're floundering. You realize what you said is literally the justification for charging Joe Biden, and so now you're just floundering. But Joe Biden did all this other stuff. That's what you're doing because here's the end point. When he said as long as you return it to a reasonable time frame, hey, is 7 years a reasonable time frame? Because that's how long it took Joe Biden to return his classified material.
Would you mind if I read from the special counsel report?
No, you could read to it when we proceed to the section that you're going to want to move to a different section. My entire argument is that the evidence that was outlined belies the opinion of her that charges shouldn't have been brought. My argument is that there is a double standard, that the evidence that was outlined for Trump that justified the charges, and then we're looking at the part in the document from her that outlines the actual evidence of what happened. You're then going to read from her's opinion that says, despite that evidence, here's why we didn't bring charges. That's why I'm asking you your opinion. That's why I'm asking you your opinion. What was the basis? Remember, this entire conversation started because I was having a discussion with people on Twitter about how all of these streamers that I debated this on with the Trump Mar-a-Lago case said the mere fact that he was on tape and said he shouldn't have had this classified information.
I never said that.
I don't care if
you tried to straw man me into that at the beginning of the discussion. I've been very clear throughout this entire thing that what constitutes to a jury a willfulness to retain those documents would be all of Trump's actions taken in consideration. No jury has ever looked at one specific fact and gone, that's enough, that's all I need to see. Otherwise, if that was the standard that we were going off of, Biden probably would have been indicted.
Okay, so what you can see constantly, this is what happens. Every time I have these discussions of is there a double standard in the way law enforcement happens, you have to get people to give their standards of what justifies charges and things like that in the first place.
That's how the legal system works.
Because what happens is, what they'll always do is post hoc justification. For example, here's an example that maybe you can understand, JC, right? when I talk to people about why there was an opening of the Trump-Russia collusion investigation, and we started to realize that there was a bunch of things the FBI did that was illegal or corrupt, such as using unverified opposition research to spy on the president, what I was told by intelligent lefties was this: because the accusations against Trump were so severe, okay, you had to break a few eggs to make an omelet, but we had to investigate. We had to do it because the
That's
accusations...
not me, though.
Okay, maybe not.
You could have
I'm
a
not saying
conversation
that's
with
you.
me instead
Please.
of alluding to... Well, right,
Please.
I don't see what the relevance is bringing up
The
prior
relevance
discussions
is
that
to
you have instead of
explain
having a discussion right now, right here with me.
The relevance is to explain the behavior that you're engaging in, right? Because let me finish. So what happened was I said, okay, can you outline exactly what that scenario is that justified the FBI doing this? And what this person told me was, because Trump's team had so many shady connections to Russians, therefore the FBI is justified in doing this. Then I was able to outline about 14 shady connections from Hillary's team with Russians, including some of the same ones. You know what they said? That's different. There were slight different things. That's exactly what you're doing here, right? So when I ask you, I say, let's start at the beginning. Is there a smoking gun that itself, without any of the other evidence, was enough to charge Trump? You say yes. He was on tape. So you say, I didn't say that. You're right, you didn't say that on Twitter, but that's what you said here initially. And I knew I had you right then because that's my entire argument. Biden did enough to violate the statute of the crime. The argument that lefties are going to try to make is, but he cooperated, so who cares if he broke the law? That's not how things work. If it was reason enough to charge Trump in a vacuum, just that section of it, then it would be reason enough to charge Biden. I'll finish by saying this. When you said, if you hand back the documents in a reasonable time frame, Joe Biden took over 7 years. Joe Biden didn't cooperate. Joe Biden weaponized his DOJ to go after Trump and then realized, oh shit, I committed the same crime I accused Trump of. It'd be like this. Let's say me and you are in town as teenagers and we steal beer from a local convenience store. We do it every weekend. I talk up the old clerk and you slightly steal the beer and then we go watch hockey and fucking pound beers together.
That young to you? Come on.
How old are you?
I'm a homeowner. I'm 24.
I'm 39, so fine. But let's just pretend that we're hanging out.
If we have to steal beer, oh my God, then the state of the country has fallen. I'll give you that one.
You must have grew up more privileged than me. Anyways, let's say that's the case, right? And then I run for mayor.
You had to steal beer in your 30s?
No, I didn't.
Oh, Rob.
I said
I'll send you beer money.
I said assume we're teenagers. Jesus. And no, I didn't steal beer, but I'm just saying. So assume we're teenagers, we're 18, and we steal all this beer, and we steal posters and shit from the store, whatever, right? And then I run for mayor and I win. And then you challenge me because you're like, Rob's a fucking shithead conservative, and I'm a progressive. I'm going to beat Rob for mayor of this town, okay? And I announced that my chief of police is now arresting you for stealing beer and posters from this store, right? And so you're under arrest. You're my opponent, but you're under arrest. I direct my police to arrest you. And then I say, oh, and by the way, I also stole beer from the store, but I'm giving it back now.
That's completely disanalogous.
That is not. That's exactly what happened. Biden got caught with the hand in the cookie jar.
You said you read this, right?
I did.
You said you read the Her report. Did you read? So if we go to pages 10 and 11, you read those, right?
I did. I've read the entire Her report.
Do you mind if I read a quick excerpt from?
You can. I'm going to get back to reading the section that I wanted here, but if you need to interject and read an excerpt where you're going, I know what really you're going to say. The differences between Trump's investigation. This. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Her actually specifically outlines, he mentions Trump. With one exception, there is no record of the Department of Justice prosecuting a former president or vice president for mishandling classified documents from his own administration. The exception is former President Trump. It is not our role to assess the criminal charges pending against Mr. Trump, but several material distinctions between Mr. Trump's case and Mr. Biden's are clear. Unlike the evidence involving Mr. Biden, the allegations set forth in the indictment of Mr. Trump, if proven, would present serious aggravating facts. Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump allegedly did the opposite. According to the indictment, he not only refused to return the documents for many months, but he also obstructed justice by enlisting others to destroy evidence and then to lie about it. In contrast, Mr. Biden turned in classified documents to the National Archives and the Department of Justice, consented to the search of multiple locations, including his homes, sat for a voluntary interview, and in other ways cooperated with the investigation.
Okay,
so let me
ask you a couple questions here. One, does the fact that Trump did something worse prove Biden didn't commit a crime?
No, of course not.
Is there a separate standard for a separate statute of the law for refusing to hand over material when it's requested?
It's so I don't like the conflation here where we go Biden had the possession of documents immediately to refusing to return. I think that if you want to, like, again, it also goes back to proving intent, which is a key part of our justice
What does that
system.
have to? What does that? Any of this have to do with the question I just asked you? Is there a
I'm trying to
separate?
answer your question, Rob.
Okay,
I'm trying
it
to answer
seems
your
like you're
question.
deflecting.
Thank you.
Get to the question.
So if you're going to prove intent when it comes in a criminal matter, you probably want to use evidence towards that. So like refusal would be something that would require intent. So I haven't seen any evidence to
That's not
indicate
true.
Biden refute. Yes,
That's
it
not
is.
true. So you're saying,
yes, it is.
whoa. Let me.
I-
That is unless I'm mishearing you, that is an absolute falsehood. What you just said is that in order to require intent, you would need refusal.
No, in order to prove, in order to refuse something, you have to have the intent to do something, correct?
Not necessarily.
Well, okay, so what are the cases where you can refuse something but not intend to?
Well, for example, you could refuse something and intend to refuse, but that doesn't necessarily mean you intended to violate the law.
It's my understanding that refusal inherently carries the knowledge that you are intending to not do something. It is a conscious refusing is a conscious action.
I
to
just
not
said
do
that
something.
you're arguing something that I never argued. Yes, a refusal is intent. For example, is having a private server in your bathroom, is that intent?
I don't see what relevance that has to.
Well, that would be intent, right? But she wasn't charged with a crime because they said even though she
also cooperated, yeah.
even though she intended to have the private server, that doesn't prove she intended to commit the
But
crime.
she refused to hand it over. Unlike
Again,
Trump, who refused to
right?
hand his documents over.
I understand. Yeah. I understand what you're doing. You're trying to conflate two separate things, right? You're trying to
follow the legal
What I'm
standards
saying
for
is,
prosecution.
you just asked me, does refusal require intent? Well, yes. To refuse something, you had to intend to refuse it, but that doesn't mean you intended to break the law. Just like to have a server in your bathroom, you had to intend.
That's not what I said. Yep, that's correct. I wasn't trying to thread those two. See, I know that everything can get jumbled when you've got all these talking points memorized. I'm going point by point. So
no, it has nothing to do with talking points. It's that I can see that you're the person with talking points that you say something and then you immediately you immediately understand that that something proves that there's a double standard, and so you change what you said. You've done that.
I don't believe there's a double standard.
Well, right, and that's why you keep changing.
You're the one who has the burden of proof in that regard.
So I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to keep going. Here's another question: did her have access to the evidence in the Trump case? Yes or no? Be easy.
It wasn't his case.
Right. So when he's saying this is what's different about this case, he doesn't really know what's in Trump's case.
He says it's not our role to assess the criminal charges, but also the indictment was made.
Two more questions.
Sure he's read it, as have many other people.
Two more questions on this. Two more questions on this. Did her go out of his way, despite outlining that there was willful retention of classified information, which is the metric for a crime? So the standard for committing the crime was there. But he said the reason he wasn't charging it was because he foresaw what the defense would be and that some jurors might buy the defense. You agree that's what happened?
So what he said was that he didn't think that he could establish a case of willfulness. He didn't think there was enough evidence to do so to a jury, which I would agree with.
So he came up with plausible scenarios, including basically Joe Biden has dementia.
Her's a conservative. I'm not sure what his ideological motivation is to shield a Democrat.
Okay, we could get to his motivations later. So you'll admit that that's what he did. He sat down on every one of these possible charges. He sat down and thought, what will the defense be? And will that defense be persuasive to...
I mean, yeah, because that's what you would.
Do. Last question.
If you are trying to determine whether or not you should indict someone with a crime, you do need to assess whether the evidence you have available is sufficient to indict them.
Great, gotcha.
Which is why Trump was indicted and why Biden wasn't.
Last question on it. Did her do the same with Trump? Did her come up with all the possible... Let me finish. Did her, please, when her saying, this is different from Trump's case, did her sit down and say, maybe Trump will say, and a jury will believe that as president, I thought that everything I had was automatically declassified. Therefore, we're not going to charge. Did her do that?
I believe her was only commenting on the indictment as the only precedential case when it comes to retaining classified documents from a former administration. The only reason he brought it up in his intro is because there's literally only one fucking time this has happened in history, and it's been Trump.
Right. There's a lot of that occurs. The only time that FISA warrants have been used to spy on a presidential campaign is Trump. That was unlawful. Nonetheless, so let's talk about what you just admitted to here. We'll talk about what you just admitted to here. First, even though you didn't answer the question, yes, there is a specific standard. I believe it's standard F under U.S. 18, whatever it is, that Trump's being charged with. He's charged under E, and that's what they were looking at charging Biden under. But her goes into the report other possible charges, and one of those charges, I think it's F, which is not handing over evidence or material that's asked for. Right? That's a separate charge. It's nice that you say right now, because previously you rambled on and didn't answer. I said, is there a separate charge? The implication to that would be this. Cooperation is the norm. Right? The mere fact that there is a separate standard, the mere fact that there is a separate standard for, okay, we're asking for this stuff, and if you don't hand it over, it's a crime, proves that it is not sufficient to say a crime wasn't committed because after you got caught committing the crime, you handed the material over. If your argument wants to be, and we could have that debate too, that Trump obstructed and Biden didn't, fine. Then you either drop the charges against Trump for the mishandling of classified information, or you charge Biden as well. But to say Biden cooperated, which is bullshit, as I've already explained, he didn't cooperate. He knew that he had this material since 2017, only handing it over once he's weaponized his Justice Department in an unprecedented way to go after Trump so he could say, oh, I can't be charged because I handed it over, is bullshit. Cooperating would have been when you saw the material, you handed it over. Not that you kept it in your garage with your crackhead son that was probably going through it to help with his foreign lobbying business that he wasn't charged through. That's not cooperation. And even if you do think that he cooperated, it still doesn't change the fact that the letter of the law is that it says if you willfully retained, simple willfulness, if you knew it was classified and you weren't allowed to have it, which clearly Joe Biden did, and not only that, he then read that material that he knew was classified, that's a charge. Later saying, oh shit, 8 years later I got caught, so now I'm handing it over. Bullshit.
So simple willfulness is a standard that requires knowledge that you need to prove they knew they were breaking the law.
Did Joe Biden know he was?
Applies to Joe Biden?
Yes, I think Joe Biden knew he can't read classified material to a ghostwriter.
Okay, you understand that just having classified material, even sharing it, isn't in and of itself a crime, unfortunately.
No, it is. The actual act of sharing classified material to someone who doesn't have a classification level and knowing that it's classified is a crime.
So
you want me to read? You said no. I would like to finish reading. I would like to so let's finish reading. I just want to read 2 or 3 paragraphs here. We'll reread the ones we did. Remember, JC said the difference was Joe Biden didn't know his stuff was classified. He never said it was classified. Let's read again. At least 3 times, Mr. Biden read classified notes from national security meetings to Swanser's team, nearly verbatim. The first 2 incidents involved the same notebook passage. On February 16, 2017, Mr. Biden appeared to explain to Swanser that a notebook entry related to a long meeting on the Security Council was probably classified, and yet he read it. That's a crime, yes? If you say this is classified material and then read it to someone that you know doesn't have a clearance, Joe Biden knew that was a crime and he did it.
What was the page number for that again?
Do you want the page number at top or on the bottom? The 249.
The real page number.
249 out of 388.
Thank you.
Right? Now, I'm going to read the second paragraph, which is even worse, which is the last or the second to last paragraph here. There is also, let me see. The third incident, this is on page 250, the bottom of the page. The third incident happened April 24th, 2017, when Mr. Biden read aloud to Swanitzer portions of a different entry of classified notes from a National Security Council meeting, also nearly verbatim. When Biden could not read a particular entry, he showed, remember you asked me for evidence that he physically showed? He showed the entry to Swanitzer, but warned him. Some of this may be classified, so be careful, I'm not sure. It isn't marked classified, but Biden nonetheless continued to read aloud verbatim portions of the same passage. Mr. Biden's decision to read notes nearly verbatim to Swanitzer that Biden had just identified as potentially classified cannot be justified. And here's their explanation why they're not going to charge. You ready? But the evidence does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to share classified information. He said he wasn't sure. Well, that's belied by the fact that he skipped over the passages previously because he thought they were classified. And saying they're probably classified, I'm not sure.
Wait. Hold on. If he skipped over the pages that he thought were classified, but previously then didn't, to me, what that indicates more is that he's just a confused old man, which is kind of what I wanted to ask you about. How much agency are you assigning to Biden?
Let me finish. We'll get to that's right. You're right. That's the defense. He's the confused old man. That's the defense they give. I'm
Reality,
glad you're
I've
admitting
seen
it.
him on television.
Let's keep going. There's also evidence Biden took steps to avoid sharing information. As explained in Chapter 5, Biden sometimes skipped over passages. And if called as a witness at trial, Zwonitzer would testify that Biden mentioned the need to be careful because he was worried about the possibility that stuff could be classified. And that there were things he couldn't tell me because lines would be crossed. Given the intelligence and military officials present and the top secrets discussed at the meeting with Zwonitzer, Biden should have realized his notes did or were likely to contain classified information. No shit, he said they were probably classified. But taken as a whole, the evidence will likely leave jurors with reasonable doubts whether Biden knew sharing the classified information and intended to. For these jurors, Biden's lapses and failures in February and April will likely appear consistent with diminished faculties and faulty memory he showed in Zwonitzer's recordings of him. Therefore, we conclude the evidence is literally on this passage specifically. The only reason they cite that they're not charging him is Biden has dementia. You're okay with that?
If that's the reason that he was acting all confused, sure.
I don't
think you should charge people with dementia of crimes just because they didn't know what they were doing or where they were.
So I just want to be clear. Are you voting for Joe Biden? Just curious.
Unfortunately, if he's the Democratic candidate.
So the argument that the Democrats and you yourself seem to be supporting is this. Joe Biden has enough dementia that we can't charge him with any crimes that require intent because he's confused and doesn't know what he's doing. But he has just little enough dementia that we could trust him with the nuclear codes and to be president for another 4 years.
Just to be clear, I believe that there's nothing that literally prevents them from charging him. There's nothing that prevented this from being an indictment other than her opinion that the evidence wasn't sufficient to convince a jury. He just didn't want to gamble on it.
It's bullshit. It clearly shows a double standard because you could be, for example, do you think Trump has diminished faculties?
Yeah, actually I do.
So then So then you think any crime that he committed that required intent should be revoked? Because
if when Biden was reading this to Zvonitzer, if he said, I shouldn't be reading this to you, but here it is, rather than what he actually said, which is, this may be classified, I'm not sure, it is marked classified, so maybe it's fine, as opposed to Trump overtly saying, I should not be showing this to you, I could have declassified this, don't get too close. I think those are markedly different statements.
Well, you can, but if they both have dementia, what's the difference? Trump was confused when he said that.
The difference is whether or not you're able to convince a jury.
So what? But you could. I've seen tons of evidence that the Democrats have put out that Trump misspeaks.
When I said that Trump has diminished faculties, I should have clarified. That's my fault. When I was being more specific to over the past year or so, when he's been faced with all of these indictments and all of this legal bullshit that he's sort of embroiled in, dude looks like he's slipping.
Okay.
And I've been asked directly by people, my friends, etc., who's gonna go first, and I think Trump has a stroke before Biden slips and falls.
So when was he slipping?
He's under a tremendous amount of legal stress.
When was he slipping? 2022?
So I said a little over a year ago. So yeah.
But in 2021, he had his faculties.
Well, he wasn't embroiled in all the legal trouble, which is what I said contributed to a lot of his loss of mental. Or what I would, and again, this is all layman's perspective, right? Neither of us are psychologists. I'm just making an assessment based on
Is her a psychologist?
No, but I would imagine that there were opinions consulted when he wrote the special counsel report.
So just to be clear, you reject the Democrats that have been criticizing her for talking about his diminished mental faculties. You agree Biden has diminished mental faculties?
I'm not. Keep in mind, I'm a Democrat by voting necessity, not by preference.
Okay,
I'm a leftist. I'm not really no, it's very relevant. I don't like either of them, unfortunately, but I would rather have Biden in office than Trump.
You don't like either of them in the same way that 99.9% of people that I debate on this subject of a two-tiered system do. You hate Trump, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
He's kind of an idiot.
And so here's the deal. You might not
like Biden too. I'm a leftist, keep in mind. He's been fucking up Palestine royally.
You might not like Hillary, but you're okay with the weaponization of an FBI that goes after Trump because Orange Man bad. Yeah, you are.
No.
Can you show me? Okay, cool. Oh, okay. Do you comment?
Well, I guess if you can just say it, then yeah, sure. What other positions do you want to describe to me, Rob?
Okay, cool. So you could show me. Do you comment on politics a lot?
What other positions? What else do I believe?
I'm asking you a question. Do you comment on politics on places like social media a lot?
Sure.
Okay, can you show me where you've commented about the illegal spying on Trump's team of FISA warrants that were paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign?
Can I comment on a very, very specific talking point from like 2017, 2016? No, I can't.
Specific talking point.
I wasn't.
We're
I wasn't
talking
politically
about an
active back then.
unprecedented.
I'm only 24. I wasn't politically active back
More
then.
evidence comes out about it every day. We've heard about this in 2020. There was Kevin Kleinsmith was charged with a crime in the Durham report just came out in 2022 that went over all this. Surely you commented on the Durham report. Or you don't think it was a big deal?
I'm not as obsessed and dick riding for Trump as you seem to
Well,
be.
it has nothing to do with dick riding with Trump. The actual truth is you are more obsessed with Trump. I don't really give a shit about Trump. What I give a shit about is a two-tiered system that engages in unlawful ways, like Chuck Schumer told us, that the FBI will find 6 ways from Sunday going after anyone that criticizes them like Donald Trump. And then that same two-tiered system for the exact same type of crimes, letting the people that were Trump's opposition off the hook. That's what I care about. So when you say, oh, no, like, clearly, it's not that I'm okay with the two-tier. I call this stuff out. I'm not biased or anything. Then my question is, it is an unprecedented situation in the history of this country. It's an unprecedented situation in the history of this country that our FBI spied on a sitting president using unverified opposition research from his opponent that was sourced by a Russian spy accusing Trump of working with Russian spies. That is one of the biggest political scandals in the history of this country. And you say?
I say that just because I said that I don't like either party and I'm not pleased with the decision that I'm being given doesn't automatically equate to I comment equally on every single thing that happens in politics on both sides. And I think that's disingenuous of you to try to strawman me into that position.
I think what I'm showing is that you really don't give a shit if there is a two-tiered system. You don't care. You don't care at all.
And so when you look, principally, I'm a socialist. Principally, I'm against a two-tiered system.
Well, then, okay, then you're going to look into that FISA warrant and you're going to say, holy shit, this is corrupt. If you found out, okay, if you
I'll look into it. I'm not that familiar with it.
Okay, if you found out in several other incidents, the FBI engaged in a two-tier system provably, including things like unlawfully
I don't like the FBI either, dude. Please, let me finish.
All of this is around. If you find that out, and you find out that they clearly in their writings were exhibiting bias, that they didn't like Trump, would that influence whether or not you think it's a double standard when literally you're admitting that basically it just came up to the preference of Jack Smith and her, what they thought a jury might think?
So if it came down to, if we didn't have the prevalence of evidence that we have with regards to Trump's willfulness to illegally retain confidential material that belonged to the United States government, if none of that evidence was present and this really was just... It did just come out. It appeared to be that he had just been like the target of a political hit job. Yeah, I absolutely would have an issue with that. I think that while I of course don't think that our system is 100% fair, not nearly as much as I would like it to be when it comes to democratically electing our leaders. I think that if we literally have a weaponized Department of Justice specifically targeting people they don't want to run for no other reason than they don't like them, I think that's a dangerous precedent set.
Okay, couple more things, right? And then we can end it or whatever you want to do. One, so you're admitting that at least on the specific case that I just outlined you, the reason they didn't charge was because Biden's diminished mental faculties.
No.
You're not. Okay, let's read that again.
Well, no.
No, it's fine. I get no further commentary necessary. No further commentary necessary.
You don't want me to commentary further, but I would really like to establish my position here.
I'll read it again. Ready?
The reason that Hurd
given the intelligence, I'm going to read it again. So you're saying that this doesn't say the reason they're not charging him is mental faculties or deficiencies? Let's read what it says. Given the intelligence and military officials' presence and topic discussed at the meeting, Mr. Biden recounted for his witness, or Mr. Biden should have realized his notes did or likely contain classified information. But taken as a whole, the evidence will likely leave juries with reasonable doubts about Mr. Biden knew he was sharing classified information and he intended to. For these jurors, Biden's apparent lapses and failures in February and April 2017 will likely appear consistent with diminished faculties and faulty memory he showed Zwanitzer's interview recordings and in our interview of him. So proceed. You're saying that's not what they're saying? They're not saying, oh, a jury wouldn't find this because of diminished mental faculties?
On the first page, during the executive summary, like right the final paragraph of the executive summary, it says, we conclude that the evidence does not establish Mr. Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The evidence doesn't seem to be there in order to convict him. So the evidence is... Part of that evidence does include the fact that he is a dementia-riddled goon, but part of that evidence also is that we don't literally have phone recordings of him admitting that what he has is secret and that he's not supposed to have it. We don't have text messages between his employees coordinating the movement of and the hiding of those boxes. Like, there's a lot.
Go ahead, go on with the spiel. We got it.
I mean,
So again, so what happens is there are many things that Biden was accused of doing that was of guilt here. For example, there are different troves. Right? There's different troves of documents. There is
I conceded to you that he should not have had those documents. Yeah.
Please let me finish. It's irrelevant to what I'm talking about. For example, there are the Afghanistan documents. Then there are his classified notebooks. Then there's the crime of him reading the classified material to his writer. And what's happening is you're reading the executive summary that just says, we don't think there was enough evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, reasonable doubt, part of that would be because Biden has dementia. But you're right, on each specific charge, they could say, well, there's other mitigating factors on this specific charge. On the charge that I just outlined, him reading classified material to someone without a clearance, it clearly shows that he said that could have been classified. He said it was probably classified at one point, and they say Biden should have absolutely knew it was classified, and that the reason they're not charging him for that, they only give one reason. That a jury would look at it and say, he seems confused. He seems to have mental deficiencies. So it may be true that there are other potential defenses when it comes to the Afghanistan documents. Defenses that are absolutely nonsense. Like one of the defenses they offer is, well, when he admits, again on tape, I found the classified materials downstairs and they're about Afghanistan, potentially.
What happened after that?
You tell me. I know what happened. Do you know?
I believe that he cooperated with the returning of those documents.
No, that's not what happened. The recording was in 2017. He said, I found the classified stuff downstairs, and he never returned it.
Did the FBI have access to that recording at the time that he made it?
It's irrelevant. If he knew
it's very relevant because how would they know to go after those documents if they didn't even know he had them?
Here we go. And so now what you're saying is it's okay to know you have classified documents.
That's not what I said.
And know it's illegal. But unless the FBI asks back from them, well, then you're okay.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, then what did you?
Stop.
Great.
My turn. I've conceded to you several times that Biden shouldn't have had them and he should have returned them immediately. Which once he knew of their I don't know how you could, in good faith, compare these two and go, yes, there's definitely a double standard. They're completely incomparable.
Again, so what you just did was I said that the statute outlines a crime. Did he willfully know that he had classified material? Yes, he says on tape, I have classified material. I have these Afghanistan documents downstairs.
Did he know he's breaking the law?
Yes. Does he know that he's not allowed to have classified material?
That's not what I asked.
Yes. He knows he's not allowed to have classified material. It's against the law. The argument that they're trying to make with the notebooks is...
Did he know that he was breaking the law and sharing it?
Okay, two things.
Do you think that's something you could prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt? Because the legal experts in this matter didn't seem to think so, including her, who's a conservative.
Two things. One, yes, he absolutely knew. I noticed that you like to hurry up and slide and move the goalposts every single time you're losing.
Look who's talking.
Argument. But where have I done it? Thanks.
You run off dialogue trees constantly.
So here we go.
You bombard me with different points. You gish gallop me at every chance.
Right.
When I try to interject and address one point at a time, you accuse me of interrupting.
Okay, so here we go. So the first point, yes, he knew. Like, why did you bring up the FBI? So here's what I say. The statute says, if you willfully retain, he knows that having classified, and the document makes this very clear, her report makes it very clear. He knows what the rules with classified documents.
It says in the second paragraph of the summary, he had it. Yeah, I conceded that to you. Stop implying that I didn't.
Please, let me finish. So he has these, I have to paint this picture for you. Give me 2 minutes and I'll play Steelman for you. Well, with his notebooks, Biden argued that even though he knew that there was possible classified documents there, he knew previously that Reagan was allowed to keep his notebooks. So he thought there was an exemption with those classified materials because it was in his notebooks and he was allowed to keep. Right? Isn't that an argument they make?
Well, that's something that they reference, is that it was practice for people to keep personal notes. Do you have an issue with Reagan taking those diaries home?
Not really. I don't even think Biden should be charged.
Oh, okay. I do too. I do have an issue with Reagan. I don't
have
an issue with Biden holding those notebooks, and I have an issue with the boxes that Trump had.
I don't have an issue in the sense that I don't think that Reagan should have been charged with a crime. I don't think Trump should have been charged.
No.
I don't think Hillary should have been charged. I don't think Biden should have been charged.
Okay.
That's my standard. So now let me finish. So that's what they say about the notebooks. You can't say that about the Afghanistan documents. Biden can't say, I thought I was allowed to have classified. He can't say that. That's not a defense he has.
Delaware home.
Please, let me finish.
He has multiple homes.
Please, I do. So when he says, in 2017. I found the box of classified Afghanistan documents downstairs. At that point, he knew that was a crime. Now, let's give the benefit of the doubt and say he realized it and went, oh shit, and then he goes down that week and he calls the relevant people at NARA or the FBI and they come collect the classified documents. Absolutely, I don't have a problem with that. But he didn't. He knew that he had the classified material and for 8 years let it go.
Yeah.
That's a crime.
Then why didn't they indict him?
That's a great question. They didn't indict him because there's a double standard.
Okay,
because
what's the double standard?
The double standard is the FBI.
It's just they don't like Trump?
That's right. That's the double. Or let me put it in words that maybe you can understand from Chuck Schumer. They'll find six. Oh, you're laughing. They'll find 6 ways from Sunday at getting back
I didn't
at
expect
Donald.
you to just admit to that. Yeah, no, I didn't.
Right.
I genuinely
didn't.
didn't.
Do you think Chuck Schumer had reason to lie when he said that the FBI was going to find 6 ways from Sunday to get Donald Trump?
I think it was a stupid thing for him to say.
Do you think when you had people like Peter Strzok at the FBI, that was one of the agents tasked with both the Hillary investigation and the Trump investigation, texting his lover that also worked at the FBI that they were going to find an insurance policy to stop Donald Trump, that's troubling?
I think that was also probably a stupid thing to say.
Do you think that the FBI illegally spying on Trump's team using unverified opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton, sourced by a Russian spy, accusing Trump of working with Russian spies, was something incredibly corrupt by the FBI?
I mean, if that conspiracy that you just laid out is true, then yeah, I think that'd be.
Do you think when they charge Paul Manafort for failing to register as a foreign lobbyist and say in the indictment, and it was from 2013, and he worked with the Podesta Group, that was the lobbying firm that was founded by John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, and yet no one at the Podesta Group was charged with any crime, even though they committed the exact same crime at the exact same time with Paul Manafort? That's something that's been...
But Manafort was charged, right?
Yes, Manafort was charged. Podesta Group
why
was.
should everybody be charged for the same crime that he was if he was the one who committed it?
Because they committed it together. They literally committed.
Did they knowingly commit it together?
Yes, they both knowingly were lobbyists that were lobbying for.
No. Everyone else at the lobby. Did they all conspire together?
A lobbyist knows when they're lobbying for a foreign entity that they have to fill out paperwork. In fact, I'm not even sure there is a portion for intent necessary in failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. Ignorance is not
this isn't something I'm really super familiar with.
So
I didn't review this leading up to
You're not,
tonight.
and here's the point. When you laugh at that, when I could show dozens of examples of the double standard, and you can't answer, when I finally get you to admit, yeah, I guess that's a crime, all you could say is, well, why didn't her charge it? And I say there's a double standard, and you laugh. Oh, yeah, there's a double standard. The FBI doesn't like Trump.
I actually think it's gut-bustingly hilarious that you think that the only reason that Donald Trump was indicted and Joe Biden, after a 388 bitch fest from her about how he couldn't find anything to convict or to indict Biden on, I think that if you come away from that and you go, well, the only reason that could have happened is because they don't like Trump, I think that is actually funny, yes.
If the exact same indictment exists on Donald Trump, right? Except instead of Smith, let's say
he was stupid enough, number one, to have his voice on record saying how many times he knew that he wasn't supposed to be showing it.
He has dementia. A jury will think he has dementia.
Okay, then does dementia explain away his efforts to hide the boxes, move the boxes, destroy the boxes, ordering people to do all those actions?
Right, if you wouldn't interrupt me, I would say. So I said, let's say...
I haven't heard you address any of those actions
If you wouldn't interrupt me, I would answer. Right? Let's assume instead of Jack Smith, it's someone that's, from Trump, that Trump's team appointed. And they outline all this shit. And they say, he moved the boxes. He did this. He did that. The exact same indictment. Everything that you're bitching about here. And it says, but we're going to decline charges because we think that this dude's got dementia. He doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about. So we're going to decline charges because we think reasonable jurists would say, oh, well, this guy's just a doddering old man. He doesn't know what he's doing. You would have been fine with that, correct?
No, I wouldn't have.
Why?
Because I think that the efforts to hide, move, and or destroy the boxes of documents indicate a willfulness and a knowledge that you're breaking the law.
So that's a willfulness, but admitting on tape saying, I have these documents downstairs that are classified, and then refusing to hand them over for 8 years isn't willfulness.
Where in this report does it say he refused to hand them over for 8 years?
Well, what, again, this gets back to the question. When I first brought this up, you said, did the FBI come in? So you're implying, and then when I said, what does that have to do with it? If he knew they were there and he didn't hand them over, then I think that it would be fair language to say he refused to hand them over.
Does President, I don't think it's fair language at all, but let me ask you this. Does President Biden own multiple homes?
Yes.
Does President Biden own multiple homes?
Yes.
Do you think that if you own multiple homes, you live an equal amount of time in each of them, or maybe you spend more time at your favorite home, which is his Virginia home?
This question
is
completely.
I'll answer.
Yeah, I'll answer.
I can explain
this
why.
Question has no relevance, but yes, you probably spend different amounts of times at different homes.
Okay, so do you think it's possible to have some things in storage in the basement of a home you rarely visit, that you aren't even aware are down there, that you haven't visited in a long time, that you eventually go down there and discover?
Yep.
Do you think that's possible?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, what's that have to do with this? So let's take your scenario further. I'm rarely at my Virginia house. Rarely. There's shit in the basement I don't even look at, right? Whenever. But then I go down one day and I'm like, oh shit, classified documents. And then I don't hand them in. What does what you just said? Oh, but you spend more time in the Delaware house. Who gives a fuck? What's that have to do with? At that point, once I see there are classified material and I know I'm not allowed to have it, and I see it, and instead of handing it over, I say, you know what? I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to hand it back.
That's bad. I already said that.
That's a crime. It's more than bad.
If it's a crime, why isn't he being indicted?
Because there's a double standard.
Okay. What is the double standard?
The double standard is Chuck Schumer said they'll find 6 ways from Sunday to go after Trump, and the actions of the
one guy said one time that they really don't like
Trump, and they're
going to try really hard to get him convicted.
All right, so let's go. So let's go through.
That is evidence to the grand conspiracy that not only are we going to unseat Trump from ever being able to participate in democracy again, but here's also evidence that we exonerate all Democrats and all people we like, and even Mike Pence. We like him too, I guess. Yeah.
It just
doesn't make a lot of sense.
You're asking for evidence, correct?
I'm asking for any evidence.
Okay, put yourself on mute. I'll go for about 30 minutes here. Ready?
No.
Yeah, you want evidence. You want evidence. You want evidence. Number one. The FBI accused Trump of being.
I'm not going to let you rant.
The FBI accused. You asked for evidence.
We can go point by point with.
Okay, let's go point by point. One, for the first time in history, the FBI accused Trump of being a Russian spy. They took evidence that they knew was unverified, that they knew was sourced by Trump's opponent. Opposition research, dirt, from Hillary Clinton. They knew the primary subsource was an alleged Russian spy. They took that information and used it to spy on Donald Trump, getting FISA warrants 4 times. What times they did it.
Please, the indictment and the Her report.
It has to do with the fact that
I asked to stay on topic.
No,
at the
you
very
didn't. So again,
yes, I did. Okay, all right. Hold on a second, dude. If you're just going
to lie about shit, I'm just going to mute you. You're not going to let me finish here.
Leave.
Then leave. What? Let me say. Originally, you said, "Can we stay in context?"
Is this how you have productive conversations with your opposition?
Listen. Let's say me and you agree to talk about what tastes better, apples or bananas. Then a half hour in the conversation, I say, not only that, cherries taste good, and you say, "I'd like to hear evidence cherries taste good." Then I start giving evidence cherries taste good. Shut up. Then I start to give evidence. Then I start to give evidence cherries taste. You're like, you don't have any evidence cherries taste good. And I'm like, here's a bunch of it. And you're like, why are you talking about this? This isn't what we agreed to talk about. You just asked me for evidence. You just asked me. So here's what happened. Let me rehash for those of you. You're stuck in a hole. You admit that Biden committed a crime with these Afghanistan documents. You can't respond to it. So then you're defaulting to just saying, then why didn't her charge him? That's the only defense you have now. Then why didn't her charge? I say there's a double standard at places like the FBI. You say, but why is there a double standard? I say, please, I'll give you a chance to talk. I say the reason there's a double standard is because they don't like Trump. Just like Chuck Schumer said. You say, aha, just because what one guy said, you don't have evidence. I say, let's start outlining the evidence of the FBI's double standard against Trump. You say, I don't want to hear this evidence.
Yeah.
Now you can go.
Shit. Yeah, no. I don't give a shit about any of that. I'd like to refocus the discussion. Can you tell me in explicit terms because let me say this, okay? From my perspective, in order to indicate a double standard, the cases would have to be near 1-to-1 identical.
That's not true.
Okay. Why not?
Because if there are outlines of crimes, right, and there are different degrees of how bad, for example, if we say for the first time in history, we're going to take away the president's driver's license for speeding, right? And you say Trump was going 65, he loses it. Biden was going 60, which is also over the limit, but we're not going to charge him with that. And you say, but technically that was speeding as well. And they just say, no, technically it wasn't. They're not saying Trump committed the crime worse.
That's not what's happening.
They're saying Trump committed the crime and it's worth charging and Biden didn't. That's what they're saying, right? So the argument, it doesn't have to be analogous exactly one-to-one, right? That's a misnomer, right? There is a separate charge that could be charged, which is a separate statute if you want to charge Trump with the idea of obstructing justice. The specific statute that says when you're requested to hand over documents, you must hand them over. That's a specific statute. But they're also charging Trump with
violated.
They're also charging Trump with Section E, which talks about the simple willfulness of mishandling classified information. That's the exact reason that they raided his home in the first place. They didn't raid Biden's home, and they got him dead to rights admitting that he violated that law, but they're letting him off the hook, and you can't excuse it. All you could say is, yeah, but he cooperated. But he didn't cooperate, as I've already outlined, which you also haven't been able to respond to. What he did was knowingly keep that documents for years and years and years, and then once he weaponized his Justice Department, as you admitted, in an unprecedented situation to go after a president for this, once he weaponized them, right, and we'll get to that in a second.
I didn't admit to the weaponization.
Once he weaponized
I admitted
them,
that it was unprecedented.
well, it doesn't matter if it was unprecedented. Fine, we'll use it. I say weaponized, you say unprecedented. Once he did that and he realized, I did the same thing Trump's accused of, he said, and by the way, I'll appoint a special counsel, they can have this stuff back. That's not cooperating.
So
that's not a reason to let him off the
under
hook for his
18 U.S.C. 793, Part 3 requires the defendant to willfully retain the document and fail to deliver it to an employee or officer entitled to receive it. So if you can take it up with her, I guess. It sounds like that's who you're really mad at here. The dude tried to nail Biden on not only 18 U.S.C. 793E, but every other section of the espionage, there were so many different things that were explored within the her report, and all of it amounted to nothing. He didn't think he had a strong enough case. So,
again,
I mean, you can kick and scream as much as you want, but this is just the way that things turned out.
So I say it's a double standard. It's ridiculous. The evidence that her outlines was enough to bring charges. You can't defend it. All you say is take it up with her. Let's talk.
I don't think that the evidence is one-to-one equivalent with what was available with Trump.
Read Section E.
Which has been my claim.
You just read that. Read Section E again. Can you read that? What you just read. Fair enough?
All right. 18 U.S. So this is the section that I read earlier. Okay. To prove unauthorized retention of national defense information under 18 U.S.C. 793, the government must show, 1, the defendant had unauthorized possession of a document.
Stop.
Right, no, both
Stop.
did. Both did.
Good.
I'm gonna go through that, and I'm gonna address that.
That's what I want. Go for it.
Part 2, the document, writing, or note related to the national defense. I would say probably both did. I didn't go into specific detail on the documents that. We don't know.
Classified means that they were. Yes.
And 3, the defendant willfully retained the document, writing, or note, and failed to deliver it to an employee or officer entitled to receive it. That's where you're going to get tripped up.
Okay, so when Biden says, I have the classified documents in the basement.
Do you think Biden has dementia?
I think Biden's confused, but first off, remember, this is 2017. Do you think he's had dementia since 2017?
How old was he in 2017? My grandfather had dementia from his late 60s to his death.
Well, here's what I'll say about this, right? The idea that Biden effectively has immunity from any crime because he has dementia, but simultaneously should be president of the United States is nonsensical.
Okay, I don't think anybody was claiming that he had immunity from any crime because of his dementia. I would agree that it's nonsense, the electoral position that we've all been forced into, where we have to choose 2 different colored pieces of shit. I'm just going to choose the piece of shit that's aligned with a party that seems to be, generally speaking, more in line with my values, which is what I always do when I vote. But with regards to whether or not, I don't understand where the equivalency is between the evidence that was cited in the Her report and the evidence in the Trump.
Again, what you're trying to do, you just read the legal statute, right?
I read the legal statute.
It is undoubtable. Okay, so we're at now you're admitting Section 1 and 2. Now we're on Section 3, that he willfully retained and didn't hand it over to the proper authorities.
Which is the thing Her said he would have trouble establishing to a jury.
So that's what we're debating. That section. We could dispute.
Correct.
Okay. If Biden did that, should he be charged? Regardless of Trump, if Trump never existed.
So first of all, if he did it, then yes, he should.
Okay.
The issue here, though, with regards to the special counsel report and with regards to the Department of Justice, isn't actually whether or not he did it. It's whether or not you can prove that he willfully did it to a jury.
Okay. And so if you're on a jury and you hear this, the guy on tape says in 2017, I have the classified Afghanistan documents. I found them in the basement. Then you find those documents in his Delaware house in 2023, right? 6-7 years later. Would you say, yep, that's proof that he knew he had classified material and he did not hand it over?
Well, it depends on whether or not he's presenting himself as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with dementia.
So the only defense that you could come up with is, in 2017, Biden had dementia.
No.
Then what's the other defense? You just said that as a jurist, okay, so he could have just forgotten.
Yeah.
That's your argument.
It's incredibly negligent and irresponsible, but yeah, he could have just forgotten.
Okay, so guy says, I have classified documents, he says it, and then it's an excuse. You could now admit, it is a legal defense you're saying, to mishandle classified documents. Admit on tape, I have classified documents. If you say, I just forgot.
You're even then when you legal defense with the ability to establish a solid case. It's not like just because something could be used to poke a hole in what you would think would be a solid case doesn't make that like individual point automatically a strong defense in and of itself. You would agree with this, yes?
No. What I would say is,
why not?
What I would say is the argument is overwhelming that this is proof that he knowingly, wittingly had classified information and he didn't hand it over. Just like on the reading the records to the
which I
ghostwriter.
conceded. Yeah.
All right. I do not find it persuasive to say, but he's old. He probably forgot even back in 2017. Particularly when the Biden team is furious at the mere allegation. In fact, let me ask you this: Biden would have to present that defense for the jury to listen to it, correct?
Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
So the allegation seems to be this. Her says, well, we couldn't bring the charges because what we're worried about is if we did, we get in front of a jury and Biden stands up and starts drooling on himself and goes, I'm confused.
I don't think that was the only issue that her had. No, I think it was a combination of a lack of sufficient evidence mixed with okay, if we already don't have enough evidence and then Biden's going to get up there and go, oh, I don't know where I am. Obviously, we're not going to convince a jury.
But we do have enough evidence. I just outlined it to you. He admitted
you seem to think that.
Yeah, okay.
The legal experts don't.
Right, and so what you're defaulting to, this is called an appeal to authority. So when I have a bunch of examples...
It's not an appeal.
Please,
it's not an appeal.
Let me finish.
No, you're not going to accuse me of making a logical fallacy when I didn't. It's fallacious to appeal to an authority when it's their field of authority. It's only fallacious if I were to say that Taylor Swift said Joe Biden was innocent. Who the fuck cares?
That's not true. It could be fallacious okay, so for example, if I have a lawyer, right, that comes on right now, if a lawyer, my friend Lecture Fan comes on and says, Rob's right, you're wrong, you would concede because you'd say, well, Lecture Fan's the lawyer.
Lecture Fan's an idiot, so I probably wouldn't care.
I think Hurd's an idiot. I think he's biased. Now what?
What's that?
I think Hurd's an idiot. I think Hurd's biased. Now, where are we? When I say appeal to authority, that's literally what you're doing. So what happens is, this happens all the time, I accuse the authorities of engaging in a double standard or corrupt. I then look at the things that we have as verifiable proof, right? These are the facts that we could all agree on. And then I show based on those facts, we could see that there's a double standard. That's what's happening in this conversation. So I'm like, let's take the facts we agree on. For example, we're talking about these Afghanistan files. He admits on tape, I found them in the basement, right? We go through it. This is what's admitted on tape. You say, but there's not sufficient evidence. That's clearly sufficient evidence. He says, I have these classified documents and we know he never handed them over. You say, but her says, it's Her's opinion that jurists could say, well, we don't believe it because we have dementia. In fact, you go further than that. You say, if I was a jurist, I would say, no, I'm not going to convict because maybe he forgot or maybe he has dementia.
No, I would say if you were a jurist, you would, because you've just told me that you don't personally find the evidence or lack thereof compelling when it comes to exonerating Biden. So if you were, you would essentially be the juror that Her would be looking for. But what Her was saying in his report is that he didn't think that was statistically likely. He didn't think it was possible that he was going to get a jury full of people who would all both find the evidence sufficient to convict and be able to just fully dismiss.
So I'll get through it. I'll get through.
As
always, it's difficult to like. So what happens is he even says, if I was a jurist, I wouldn't convict because I would say maybe he's confused or maybe he has dementia. And so I say, so then the reason that we're saying is Joe Biden has literal immunity from any crime that requires police. That's what you said. I said, if you were on the jury and this guy said, I forgot, would you convict? You said, well, it depends on his mental state. If he could have forgot, he has dementia. That's what you said. We go back to the tape if you want. Let me finish. Let me finish. So then I said, well, that gives Biden practical immunity then. Because as long as enough people said he has dementia, he now has practical immunity from any crime that requires intent. Because he can always make the defense.
If he actually has dementia, he can't have the intent to commit a crime. He doesn't know where he is. How would he know how to carry out a crime?
So he needs to be president. He's so addled that he can't be held accountable for any crime, but he's got it together enough that he should be president. Great. Now, I asked you specifically.
I didn't say that either.
Who are you voting for?
All I've said with regards to the election. All I've said with regards to the election is I would prefer Biden over Trump.
Right, gotcha.
I think Biden is more capable than Trump. And I think that says a lot about Donald Trump's fucking abysmal failure in his term. When I would prefer a dementia patient over him.
Your opinion means nothing to me. What you're saying is despite the fact that he has dementia, you think that he's qualified to be president in this circumstance. That's who you're voting for.
That's not what I said.
Are you voting for Biden?
Yeah, that doesn't.
Do you think that you're voting for Biden? Do you think he has dementia to the point where he can't be charged with any crimes that require intent?
No.
You don't. Then why isn't he being charged here? The only evidence
you give... There was a lack of sufficient evidence.
Okay, so give me the lack of... So when I say specifically...
Give me the lack of sufficient evidence?
Give me the explanation. Give me the explanation for the lack of sufficient evidence. Let's go again. We'll rehash the same talking point.
Advance the conversation past the simple recordings and go on to where Trump deliberately for half a year
I know.
to return any
so
of the
again, you say
do anything similar
you
to
say
that?
There's a lack of evidence. We'll go back to it. He says on tape, I have the classified documents downstairs.
I haven't argued any of that with you. Can we move on to
no. Then how can you say lack? How can you say lack of evidence?
I said insufficient evidence, not lack.
How can you say insufficient evidence that's outside the scope of Biden's dementia? Because that's what I just said. That the only reason
that's what the Hurt report says, and I'm not a legal expert.
Okay, so then we get back to them. That would mean that
I'm not pompous enough to assume that I know better than people that work in the Department of Justice as to how the legal system works.
So you're arguing. Then why are you on here debating? See you later. See you later. Then why are you on here debating? If your only argument's going to be, I don't know.
What's going on?
I'm not running, dude. I'm not running.
Can I have a turn here?
No, I'm not running.
No,
no, that's right. No, I'm going to finish what I'm saying. I'm not running. If your argument is, I can't deal with the facts that you're outlining, I'll just say her disagrees, and I'm not a legal expert, so it doesn't matter. Why the fuck am I talking to you?
I've dealt with it plenty. Can you address what's the?
I'm going to go back to it. You have not dealt. You have not dealt with it. You have not dealt with. Can you explain to me the lack of sufficient evidence other than Biden's dementia when he says on tape, "I have the classified Afghanistan documents. I have them."
Clearly, that doesn't seem to be enough to convict him with.
Why? Explain to me why.
Because I don't think that one piece of evidence should ever be enough in and of itself to convict someone. I think you would agree with that.
So then, that is absolutely farcical.
It's a combination of evidence.
That's farcical. There's all the time that one piece, for example. So you're saying that if they find and by the way, it's not just one piece of evidence. Even if we just look at this one piece of evidence, because her outlines, there's motivation.
Then why are you hyper-focusing on the one recording?
Because if there is evidence, if there is a smoking gun piece of evidence that you committed a crime, then that's sufficient to charge for that crime. There's other evidence. For example, we talked about him admitting this is probably classified and reading it to his writer.
Yeah, I even said that.
Right. So again, you keep saying that's bad. What we're talking about is, does it rise to the level of a crime? Yes, it clearly does. So I'm citing yes. Yeah, and why doesn't it? Give me the reason.
It does rise to the level of a crime, but it seems to not rise to the level that they're willing to indict.
Okay, so now we're talking about two specific scenarios. We have scenario one, the Afghanistan documents. He admits, I know they're classified. He doesn't hand them over. You say that the reason we don't charge for that is because, what's the defense?
With the Afghanistan documents?
Yes.
Because you wouldn't, I don't think that there's enough evidence to sufficiently prove that he had a criminal intent.
All we need, you read the standard, is that he had simple willfulness, that he knew that he wasn't allowed to have the classified documents.
No, he needed to know that he was acting in an illegal manner, not
Right.
that he didn't.
He
know he was
knows
supposed-
her. In fact, her goes on to specifically in this to talk about he knows what the rules for classified documents are. So again, if he says they're classified and he's a 40-year politician and knows he's not allowed to have classified material, that's willfulness. So explain to me what the lack of evidence is, why he shouldn't be charged.
Because that's one piece of evidence, Rob.
Oh, no. Why shouldn't he be charged on that
Why
charge?
are you so? Can we go? But can we address the differences in these two so we can actually?
Why
compare
shouldn't he be
contrast
charged? Why shouldn't he be charged? Saying it's one piece of evidence. Let's say that's the only crime he committed. Well, you shouldn't be charged if you only committed one crime.
He probably should be charged. But again,
Why wasn't
as I've
he
addressed
charged?
it feels like a bunch of times already. The issue with the Her report isn't whether or not Biden broke the law or whether or not he should be charged. It's whether or not Her thought that he was capable of establishing both of those to a jury.
And what's the evidence what's the rationale that he may not have been able to establish it to a jury?
It's a combination of the different pieces of evidence that he collected, as well as Biden's dementia.
Okay, so give me the pieces of evidence.
You've read it.
I have read it, right? And this is what's funny. I keep saying it's because of dementia. That's what, and you're like, no, there's more. I'm asking you.
Because of dementia.
Okay, right. It's not just dementia, and so I'm asking you. Go ahead. What's the more evidence? Go.
Well, so I don't think that just having a phone call where you say, "I found these boxes. I don't think I'm supposed to have them," in and of itself proves that you are a criminal.
You said at the beginning with Trump that it did.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
There's a lot. See, because I said that piece of evidence in and of itself. With Trump, it's a lot more than that. Biden never made any efforts. He never directed anybody to hide the boxes. Once he knew that people were coming after them, he surrendered them willingly. He let the FBI search his home willingly. He surrendered everything.
You're moving on to stuff that's completely irrelevant.
To move on. It's not irrelevant.
It is irrelevant.
It's
again.
The coalescence of evidence being able to build a strong
We could go back with this, right? So one, what you're doing is saying it's okay if he broke the law if he cooperated 7 years later. That's absurd.
Like to move
there's no
on
standard.
to the,
Secondly,
Trump
we've already argued why there's a separate standard for a case that's basically obstruction. If the argument you're going to make is Trump obstructed and he should be charged with that, but neither Trump nor Biden should be charged with the mishandling of classified documents, fine. Or if the arguments you're going to make is Trump did worse because he obstructed, but both him and Biden should be charged with mishandling classified documents, fine. But that's not what you're doing. What happened is we started off the conversation and you said, yes, if Trump just from this tape alone, on tape admitting, oh, this stuff's classified and I shouldn't have it and blah, 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 that's sufficient for you. That one piece of evidence would be sufficient for you to say, yes, he's guilty. Now, when I say, okay, Joe Biden said on tape, I have the classified Afghanistan documents, that proves willful retention. You say that one piece of evidence isn't enough. I want you to explain to me why that one piece of evidence isn't enough.
I would like to move on to the Trump obstruction.
Right, you can't explain. Last question I have.
No, I'm tired of repeating myself.
Last question. Then let me add. So you're saying because it's not just about whether or not a crime was committed, it's about whether or not a jury would convict.
And no wonder you were so willing to engage in debate with me. Like, you're just not willing to have a good faith discussion whatsoever. We can't go over the facts. We can't follow like a pace of discussion that we both agree on. I just have to be rammed into your fucking dialogue.
I'll ask the question again. You said that it's not just about whether he committed a crime. It's whether or not you could get a jury to convict, correct?
Do you think that Joseph Biden has dementia, or do you think he's some sort of like conscious, super hyper experienced actor? Which one is it?
I think Joe Biden probably has some forms of dementia now. Dementia is not an excuse for, one, the fact that some of these crimes started when he was in the Senate. Second, the ones we're talking specifically about here is from 2017, and he had more cognitive faculties. You could even see from recordings and things he was doing in 2017. I think currently he basically has dementia, but if he mishandled classified documents now, dementia still isn't an excuse. It could be an excuse if it happened once, but if you're repeatedly reading material that you're acknowledging is classified to a ghostwriter over and over on tape, dementia is not a significant defense to that. I would still find him guilty. Now, I answered your question. Will you answer mine? My question is,
what Trump did was wrong? Do you think he should have been indicted?
My question is as follows. No, I already said he shouldn't have been indicted. My question
is
as follows.
Should Biden be indicted?
I answered your question, so I'm going to. My question is this: you're saying that it's not just whether or not a crime was committed; it's whether or not you could get a jury to convict.
Why should Biden be indicted but Trump shouldn't?
He shouldn't. If you listen to me, I
Oh,
said,
you don't think Biden should be indicted?
That's correct. I said that both
Okay.
Biden, Trump, and
So your
Hillary.
issue more is with the fact that Trump was indicted rather than the fact that all of these people weren't indicted? Because
I will answer you in good faith if you give me a couple seconds and then agree to answer my question afterwards. Fair enough?
I've answered plenty of your questions.
Here's what my answer is, right? I think that there are certain crimes that happen all the time in Washington, such as failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, mishandling classified documents. And I think if you are going to selectively... Well, no. Yes, but no. But if you're going to if you're going to selectively single people out, that's wrong. So, for example, the easier example is failing to register as a foreign lobbyist. It's the worst kept secret in Washington. Literally, thousands upon thousands of lawyers at lobbying firms do this every year, and we never charge any of them. But if we're going to start saying, well, we're going to charge people connected to Trump, I disagree with that. Same reason I would disagree charging Hillary for the mishandling of classified, because the truth is Obama did it, Bush did it, all of these people do it, right? So unless I would say no, you just wag your finger at them and you say no, or you charge all of them. My preference would be to charge none because I think this happens all the time. But if you're going to start charging, if you say, well, now the standard is we're going to charge, then you got to charge them all. That's what my argument is. I don't give a fuck about Joe Biden. I don't give a fuck about Donald Trump. I care about a two-tier justice system that over and over is like, they're going to go after people connected that they don't like Trump and MAGA people, as harsh as possible, over and over and over. And then when it comes to his political opponents, they're going to go as easy as possible. Every single time. That's what happens. That's what my issue is.
With regards to the retention of classified documents, you would say that neither should be charged. What about the obstruction?
It's different. We'll get to the obstruction.
Can we get to that now, please?
No, because you're going to answer my question that I had first. I have a couple questions for you very quick.
I've answered plenty of your questions,
We'll have a couple questions.
A discussion is a back and forth.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to end this with talking about the obstruction, right? So you'll get the last word, the last topic.
I don't want to talk. I want to have a conversation.
The last conversation that will stick in people's minds the most will be the topic that you want, the obstruction, okay?
I just want to know if you think what he did was bad.
So I think that the actual mishandling of classified information was bad by all of them.
Then why don't you think that any of them should be indicted?
You've said I don't know how many times you think what Biden did was bad, but don't think he should be indicted. Okay.
Actually, I think I said that he probably should be. I just said that I don't think that, according to her, he couldn't prove the case to the jury. I've been remarkably consistent throughout all
this.
You did
not say that. You did not say that Biden should be charged. This is the first time in this entire discussion that you said that Biden should be indicted.
You know, I'm recording this too,
right.
And I have a pretty good memory. I know that's not true.
I will eat crow. I will publicly go on X and say, yeah, you know what?
I'm not
you
asking
clip
you
it.
to do
no,
that.
No,
I'm
clip
just
it.
asking you
clip
to
it.
take me
clip it. Clip it. You or anyone in your audience that's listening, clip when JC here said.
Yeah.
Well, I don't, dude. Don't sell yourself.
I don't have
short.
a lot. Nah.
Who gives a fuck? That doesn't matter. That doesn't mean who's right or wrong. That shit's all. But what I'm saying is, anyone who's listening, on my audience, your audience, anyone that heard you previously say, I think Joe Biden should be indicted, go ahead and clip it.
Well, I think what I said was I think they should both be held criminally liable for the retention of
documents. Don't recall you ever saying that either, but fair enough.
Right after I said that, you said, I don't think either of them should.
Okay. Now, I'm going to get to this. We'll see. I'll look. Do you think, you're saying that the argument isn't just whether or not they committed a crime, it's whether or not you could get a jury to convict?
Well, that was what her report, that was what their conclusion was, that he did, like it says right up top, he willfully retained the documents, but whether or not they could convince a jury of that is what's in question here.
Because
it was the opinion of the special counsel that he probably did willfully retain these, but whether or not you could convince a jury of that is what's at issue here. That's why I brought up the case precedent. You know?
Okay, and so you would also agree that it says not only that he had dementia, but he would perceive as a likable old man.
That was part of it, yes.
So and last question real quick, and then I'll make my point. Where would this jury trial have been held?
I'm not particularly familiar.
It would have been D.C. Would it shock you to know it would have been D.C.? Probably.
It would probably not blow my mind, no.
Okay. So then what this is effectively saying is that if we have an investigator that says, well, this trial is going to be heard in a venue where it's 90% favorability for the person I'm looking into, and they're going to understand that there's political ramifications for this, I literally can't charge him with any crime because a jury could always just say, we like him.
Sure. Like I said, her report was like 300 some pages of bitching.
Do you understand what I just said to you? That means that literally Joe Biden has effective
It's a
immunity.
strategic assessment. If it's an accurate statement, regardless of your opinion of the the composition of the jury, if what he's saying is true, then you can just rage at the truth, I guess.
It
If
has
that's,
nothing
like,
to do. It has nothing
I
to do with
believe
raging
that-
at the truth. What I'm getting to is if what the implications of this is, well, I think he committed this crime, but we're going to say that people will like him and say, jury might say, no, we're not going to charge. If we don't charge for those sorts of crimes, and the logical extension of that is, well, if you're in a venue, but like for example, if you were in a venue that's like 98% MAGA supporters, right? Would it be okay then if that's where Jack Smith had to try Trump in an area that's 98% Trump, and Jack Smith said, fuck, these Trumpers will never vote to indict Trump, so no charges being brought. You would be okay with that?
Well, just as I'm not okay with it with Biden, I still think the charges should be brought. I do think that if Jack Smith said that, like if it was a special counsel report rather than an indictment, I mean, it would make sense, right?
It would not make sense. It would be absurd.
Well,
I would criticize it as well.
From a strategic perspective, he acknowledged that there was some evidence present, but not enough to convince a jury.
So we'll
Which,
go. We'll
by
move
the way,
on, we'll move
I
on to
don't-
what you want to talk about, but I'm going to say this last part real quick. Followers of me will notice when I've debated people like Pisco over and over on this, they always
don't bring
fault
up
to.
Pisco.
No, I'm not lumping you in, but Pisco. Other than you're making the same sort of argument that he makes in a less sophisticated way.
Well, he's a smart guy, yeah. And I'm not a lawyer.
Right. Pisco will make this argument that anytime I bring up these obvious double standards, he'll default at the end to saying, and I'm quoting, there's prosecutorial discretion. In other words, in our system, we allow prosecutor. For example, if I see you technically going 2 miles over the speed limit, I don't have to charge you, right?
Well, so like if you were like a cop, right, you wouldn't have to I am breaking the law, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone going 2 miles over the speed limit doesn't get pulled over, but someone going 20 does.
Right,
Yeah,
and
if
a
that's what you're
prosecutor
getting at.
could decline to prosecute if they want. There are mitigating circumstances.
Part of that is to avoid overloading the justice system.
Well,
correct?
but that could be. I don't know that has much to do with it. I think part of it, like the reason for it's something like this. Let's say I'm going 90 mile an hour in a 50, and the cop pulls me
you
over.
think that it's because they don't like Trump. Sorry, got it.
Let's say I'm going 90 in a 50, right? And they pull me over, and I say my wife's in labor. They're probably not going to charge me, right? They'd be like, "Oh shit, get him to the hospital." You see what I'm saying? Now,
Around where I live, they might.
but
They might
technically,
ticket
I was
you.
egregiously violating the law.
You
Technically, right?
not technically, literally, you were
Okay,
egregiously.
but they
violating the
have
law.
discretion to say there were mitigating circumstances that we declined to prosecute.
Yeah,
Makes
but
sense?
her report isn't about mitigating circumstances. It's about the ability to construct a case in front of a jury. Which, when we're talking about like a speeding stop, those are two very different things.
So what happens is, constantly what we see is for almost the identical crimes, what happens is they charge Trump and the people around him as difficultly as possible and then make any excuse whatsoever to let people that are Trump's opponents off the hook, including
Identical crimes, different amounts of evidence.
including her saying, well, we have him dead to rights and we think he willfully retained, which literally is the definition of the law. But he might come off as dementia-addled and likable, so we're not going to charge him. It's bullshit.
Can I ask you a question, just real quick? Would you take such an issue if they had indicted Biden but not indicted Trump over the double standard in the justice system?
Probably.
Okay. I mean, at least you're consistent.
Like, for example, I said this, right? Like, you can go through my recordings and hear this all the time. For example, there was that. You remember when Trump Jr. met this Russian spy in a fucking hotel? It was a big deal. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think he should be charged. I think, look, politics is fucking slimy. I hate a lot of shit about it. But if you want to talk to a foreigner and the foreigner says, I got fucking dirt on your opponent, I think that should be legal. If you're like, oh, I'll give you something for it. When I'm president, I promise you this. That's not legal, right? But
That
just
would
to
not
say,
be legal.
why shouldn't it be legal?
No, I said that would not be legal.
Right. So, but people were saying Don Jr. committed a crime. Don Jr. he talked to a Russian trying to get dirt on his opponents. Right? I said I don't think that's a crime. Then Hillary Clinton's team talked to a Russian, and not just trying, they did get dirt on Trump that happened to be misinformation. I also said that shouldn't be a
You're going to hear me
crime.
defending Hillary Clinton.
But
You're going to hear me
listen,
defending her even less than
It has
Joe
nothing
Biden,
to do
just
with
for
you
the
defending her.
record.
What I'm doing is showing.
I don't really care.
My stance on it was that
I think
also
she should have been. I think she should
Listen.
probably. I think that for the email service, she probably should have been indicted. Yeah.
Listen,
Give you that one.
What I'm saying is that I said she also shouldn't be indicted with a crime. But if your stance was, no, I disagree, both should be indicted. I disagree with you, but at least that's a consistent position. My
That's a
position
position I
here,
maintain.
my position here isn't that Biden should be indicted and not Trump. I'm consistent in saying. Now, I would say I don't know if I would have raised my voice that much.
I wasn't trying to portray that as your position.
I'm just clarifying.
I was trying to elucidate a consistency or an inconsistency, and I think we got there. So thank you.
And I also say this: if it's a one-off, if this was the only thing, and they charged Trump and not Biden, I don't think it would necessarily be as big of a deal. I think it's still a big deal just because it's affecting our political system, But the problem is, it's over.
I think you would still think it's pretty big.
It's over and over and over and over and over. Over and over and over.
Look, if you want to have an extended discussion about the double standard present in the justice system as a whole, then that would be a different debate I would have to prepare for. I only prepared for comparing her report to the Trump indictment.
Well, what we did successfully was we showed that now you're admitting, feel there's enough evidence that you would recommend an indictment. You just don't think that that's what you said.
Well, so me personally, sure.
Okay. And so the question is then, why didn't her do it? And the only reason we could come up with is dementia, which is absurd.
No, that's not the only reason. Stop doing that.
I've asked you repeatedly, give me more reasons.
The reason is that he thought he couldn't convince a jury that he was guilty of a crime.
And why?
Part of the reason that he thought he couldn't do that was because there wasn't enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Biden had intentionally done this.
All right, so if there wasn't enough evidence, what do you call him on recording multiple times saying this is classified material? That
wasn't enough evidence.
That's not true. That's
reasonable doubt.
You could say that, but it's bullshit. That proves willfulness.
You can call it bullshit, but that doesn't make it bullshit.
If I say right now, like, I'm going to go to the bank and rob them, and then the bank gets robbed and you find the money at my house, would you say that doesn't prove Rob willfully intended? There's still a lack of evidence.
No, but I would say that doesn't necessarily. If you just said, I'm going to rob the bank, and then the next step was we found the money at your house, I don't even think that necessarily proves you robbed the bank.
It would probably be good evidence if the bank...
It would be good evidence, right. Sure, but it doesn't prove it on its own.
But it shows intent. Like, well,
if we had like, I don't know, like 6 months of text messages where you're telling people to move the money around after you stole it and not give it back to the bank after they've requested it repeatedly, and then your house gets raided by the cops and they find the money in your house, and the whole time you've been trying to like hide it from them, maybe even destroy part of it so that you couldn't be found with it, then I would say all of that combined, along with you saying, I think I want to rob the bank, probably indicates that, yeah, you robbed the bank.
What you're doing is saying, if you did more, like I say, if I did this, you say, if you did this and 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 this.
Yeah.
Okay, right, that's what you're saying. So then what if I did this? What if I, over a course of months and months and months, kept admitting that I had classified material, then intentionally withheld
That's not
it?
What happened with
yes,
Biden.
it is.
Come on, man.
Yes,
no,
it is.
It's not.
Want me to read it again?
Over the course of months and months and months,
yes.
repeatedly admit that he had. No,
yes.
There was one phone call in
Not
October
true.
2017 where he said that he found those documents at his Delaware home.
That's true.
And then there were two separate instances of him reading classified material out, whether knowingly or unknowingly, to his ghostwriter.
Let's read
That's
again.
Not repeated
Quote,
over months and months and
quote,
months and months.
At least 3 times Mr. Biden read classified notes from national security meetings
so
to
3
Swanser,
times.
nearly verbatim. For the first 2 incidents involved the same passage. On February 16, Biden appeared to explain to Swanser that he had a long meeting in Security Council. It was probably classified. He said that again the next time. Then the third time, he said, I'm not sure if it's classified or not, and then read it out. So those took periods over a period of months, right? Those 3... The talks with the ghostwriter?
Didn't that all happen in February, I believe was what it said.
You could be right, actually. February, 2 months. February 16th, April 10th. So no, you're incorrect.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. There was April
24th is the third incident.
Yeah. Okay.
So February. So over the course of those several months, that's February, March, April.
Over the course of several months, 3 individual instances.
Plus then the time he admitted to having the classified box. Plus then he held on to the evidence for 7 years.
Well, hold on. We were just talking about admitting in a recorded
so
manner.
we have 4 times. So your
4
argument
instances.
was, if you just said you were going to rob the bank once, we don't know. How about 4 times?
4 times with the span of about 2 or 3 months in between those 2 times, and then several months in between the next one, and then the money shows up in your house. No, sorry.
Bullshit. You're just full of shit.
You just get mad when I disagree with you, but I'm sorry.
It's just
I'm being 100%
objectively
honest with
stupid.
you.
It's an objectively stupid standard.
Thank you.
It
I am
is.
objectively stupid.
All right, you want to talk about obstruction? Go ahead.
I'm curious if you think that what Trump did with regards to the obstruction was bad.
Well, first, let's ask this. Did they actually destroy anything?
Was the obstruction that Trump perpetrated bad?
I don't know. If it's as outlined, if he specifically intentionally held material, that's bad.
Okay.
If
all right. That's all I needed to know.
Okay, did he destroy anything? Or his team?
It says that he ordered people to destroy them.
But they got all the material.
I don't think he personally destroyed anything.
But he got, right, well, not just him personally, his team. They got the material they were looking for. There's no evidence that anything was destroyed. They have evidence that boxes were moved.
I'm pretty sure the evidence only shows that boxes were moved and that he told people to destroy them. I don't actually know if there was any evidence of anything destroyed.
Did anything that they requested of Biden's get destroyed?
Yeah, so actually that's interesting. There were recordings. When it comes to the ghostwriter, there were recorded conversations that he deleted the second, which, by the way, is pretty fucking bad too. Deleted the second that he knew the special counsel was going to be investigating him. And then after that, he, I don't know, maybe had a come to Jesus moment where he realized how bad he fucked up, turned over his PC and hard drive to the FBI, turned over complete transcripts of the written transcripts of the recorded conversations. Not only that, the FBI was able to recover most of the deleted files.
Whoa. What was that word you just used there? Most?
So are you going to Watergate me now?
No, what I'm going to do is say within the Trump situation, we're accused of obstructing in that they attempted to prevent materials from getting to the FBI, which ultimately,
the writer willingly surrendered the materials.
Please let me finish. That they were accused of obstructing by attempting to withhold material, which ultimately all made its way to the FBI, as far as we know. With the Biden team, what we know is that there was material requested that was destroyed, and then in an oh shit moment, that's basically what you said, they said, we better hand this over, and they were incapable of recrafting all of the material.
Do you know why that was?
Do I know why they were incapable of recrafting all the material? Yeah. I would assume because when you try to digitally put something back together, sometimes there are certain pieces that don't come through.
Software limitations. There's fragmentations on that. However, I would just like to point out, you seem to imply that the surrendering of the material was equivalent in both cases. Need I remind you that Mar-a-Lago was stormed by the FBI to get some of those boxes back? It's not like Trump handed them all over willingly, as the ghostwriter and Biden did.
I know quite well, right? But nonetheless, when just looking, we'll talk about that. I know what we're talking about right now is obstruction and the destruction of evidence. What we know is
obstruction. I ceded that there was no destruction.
Okay.
I don't think you need to destroy evidence to obstruct.
That's true, but it is further obstruction to obstruct to the level that material is not recovered versus attempted obstruction to obstruct, but the material is eventually turned over, even if it's unwillingly.
Are you then implying that the ghostwriter intentionally destroyed these specific sections?
What I'm implying is he intentionally destroyed it, and you admit that that was bad.
Yeah, it was fucking bad, but then he turned over written transcripts and his hard drive and PC so the FBI could try and recover them. As far as I'm aware, they got most of that information.
Why do you think he destroyed it?
I can't guess to someone else's mindset. I'd probably, if he's a fucking partisan hack, probably because he was like, oh shit, I don't want Biden to get in trouble for anything.
So that's attempted obstruction. That would be similar if Trump said move the boxes, and then someone said, Trump, they got you on tape saying move the boxes. He said, oh, never mind, don't move the boxes, give them back.
Yeah, sure. I would say that what the ghostwriter did was attempted obstruction. What exonerated him in that case was his willingness to cooperate with the investigation immediately following the realization that, holy shit, that was a bad thing to do.
That's irrelevant to whether or not there was obstruction. The second part that I would ask is this.
It's very relevant to whether or not they think they can charge him.
You seem to be a little more familiar than me when it comes to sort of computers and data and stuff like that. What level of...
No.
We'll assume I'm on 2.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to falsely portray myself.
Let me ask you this, and I'll get a computer expert on and ask about this. Is it possible, let's say I had... We'll oversimplify this. I had a hard drive with 10 files on it, right? Is it possible for me to completely erase one so that it couldn't be recoverable, then erase the other 9, and then send that and say, oh shit, I accidentally erased this. Here, can you put it back together? Knowing full well that the one thing I didn't want them to see wouldn't be recoverable. Is that possible?
See, now we're getting conspiratorial. What reason do you have to believe that the ghostwriter would do that?
Well, it doesn't matter what my reason for it would be. The problem is that this would speak against the defense of they cooperated, because we can't be certain that all the material that was requested was returned if it's possible after deleting it to intentionally know they would be incapable of getting all of the material.
I mean, if we're just going to start appealing to conspiracism here as like a get out of jail free card, then I'm just going to say that Trump planned it the whole time from the second he was elected. He knew that he wanted to retain these documents and sell them to the Saudis and the Russians.
That's fine. You can say that.
But that's why he did it.
What I'm saying is that you, just like her, just like Smith and the rest of the people, constantly engage in this double standard when there are things that, okay, maybe
you can't just declare the double standard when you haven't established it beyond,
I don't
think they like Trump.
That's not true. Both sides obstructed, yes or no? You even said it, that you thought he did it intentionally. That's clear case obstruction.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. If I steal a bunch of cocaine out of the police weapon locker and then feel bad about it and the next day return it, did I commit a crime?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're talking about. So what we're doing is
you're setting up... Hold on, wait, I have a question. Do you think that they would charge you the same if you didn't return it? And they had to come get it from you?
Probably.
Do you think they would treat you the same?
It would maybe. No, wait. It might be the same charge, but perhaps a judge in the sentencing phase would be more lenient on me.
Or rather, okay, sure.
That's usually, nonetheless, I would still be charged. So the question remains, when we're starting on a discussion of obstruction, on some ways I'll concede what Trump's alleged to have done is worse obstruction than what the Biden's group is alleged to do. But on one
which ways?
In one particular way, we could see that actually what Biden's team was worse. They destroyed material that wasn't fully recoverable. Yes or no? Trump's team didn't do that.
Since transcripts were provided for those recorded conversations that matched up with what they were able to recover and help them fill in the missing pieces, I don't think that it's fair to assert that it wasn't fully recoverable.
It is
yes,
fair.
the literal audio files were not fully recoverable, but the conversations were not lost.
It is fair, specifically when we're talking about conversations where one or two words could make a difference in regards to intent. Because a transcript might accidentally or purposely leave out a couple of things.
See, now you're appealing to the conspiracism again.
It has nothing to do with conspiracy.
Like, how am I supposed to address any of these points if you could just go, well, what if he was Biden's best friend and really wanted to get him out of jail?
Let me ask you this. If the FBI subpoenas digital records from me, and I give them 90% of what they want, but 10% of it I say, I don't feel like giving that to you, but here's a transcript of what it said. Are they going to accept that?
Are you also providing a fragmented recording that they can compare the transcript to?
Sure, and that 10%'s not there. I'm like, sorry, I deleted it. You can put it back together, and then they can't put it all back together. Would they accept that?
They seem to have in this case.
My point would be they would say, no, there's a reason we want the physical evidence and not just your transcript of it.
The transcript is physical evidence.
No, but the transcript is physical evidence that I have created. For example, let's say we're doing a transcript of this debate, right? And I say fuck, and I don't want that in there for some reason, and I leave it out. It's not a big deal, but that's not a complete, accurate transcript of everything that was said. This transcript the transcript relies on the physical recording and typing of someone, and they could leave out words or stuff, or there could be stuff said in the background. All I'm saying is there's a reason that the investigators wanted the official digital material and recordings as opposed to just a transcript.
Yeah,
there's a reason.
They got both.
No, they didn't. They got almost all of the digital, but not all, and they got the transcripts.
Okay, so then you're trying to imply that somewhere in this, and we'll just use the numbers that I know they might not be 100% accurate, but the ones that we've been using in our hypotheticals, that this missing 10% is somehow the smoking gun evidence that's going to convict Biden?
That's not what I'm saying. Similarly, I could ask you, are you saying the evidence that was in those boxes were the smoking gun evidence that was going to convict Trump?
I don't think we needed a smoking gun. He was pretty fucking stupid in the open with everything he did, yeah.
The point is, it doesn't matter if that evidence was damning to Biden or not. What matters is it's obstruction.
Yeah, but if you read on in her report, he said that even considering that the willingness to cooperate with the investigation didn't seem like he was going to be able to establish to a jury that they actually were intending to directly obstruct the investigation, rather that they just fucking panicked.
What they would be able to
Which is
say
probably
over,
what happened.
why don't you just cut to brass tacks and say, in DC, everyone loves Biden, so there's no fucking chance they convict him of anything if it means Trump.
Do you really think that's true?
Yes.
You know how many Republicans are in DC?
Not many. It's something like 90% Democrat.
Isn't it like, don't you guys have the House majority right now?
Dude, the jury pool's not going to be made up of congressional leaders. It's going to be made up of the people that live
You're talking
there.
about in DC.
Correct.
And also, her. If we're going to go down that logic, as I've stated twice before, her is a conservative. If anybody's ideologically motivated to nail Biden, it would be a
That's
conservative. Yeah.
bullshit. It has nothing. The battle has nothing to do with conservatism versus liberalism. The battle has to do with the establishment.
Everyone versus
It's the
Trump.
same way,
Got it.
right? It's the same way it's saying, "What do you mean James Comey did bad shit at the FBI? He's a registered Republican, so that's impossible. He couldn't have been against Trump, even though we could literally see from his own words and
I don't think I
actions
said that.
when he was." It's the same argument. If Comey's a
Just
Republican,
just because the argument to you seems analogous doesn't even necessarily mean that it's one that I would make.
okay, so your argument is her is a Republican, and therefore he wouldn't do this. But that's completely different. You would never say Comey is a Republican, and therefore he wouldn't be corrupt against Trump.
I presented that point as a counter to your idea that everybody in DC loves Biden so much that they'll just jerk themselves into oblivion.
Because you are not understanding. If you get arrested in D.C. tomorrow and you have a jury trial, is the jury trial going to be made up of Cory Booker and Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren?
No. You made the claim that part of the reason that they're not going after him is because everybody in DC loves Joe Biden so much. I don't find that to be true. Could you substantiate that a little bit?
Yes. If the argument is a jury wouldn't convict because he's likable and has dementia, I'm saying in an election season where the average person, the overwhelming of people in DC absolutely despise Donald Trump, that this jury pool would be made up of. They absolutely despise Donald Trump and they like Joe Biden, that there is no fucking chance that they would be able to get a conviction on just about any charge. Because at the end of the day, even if they thought Biden was guilty, they'd be like, oh fuck, if we convict, that pretty much is assuring us that Donald Trump will be president. We ain't gonna do that shit. And so it basically gives Biden immunity.
Low approval rating. I don't actually think that many people do like him. You know that from a leftist perspective, we're pretty mad about whole Israel-Palestine thing. I know, at least from my camp, and that's not just
you're
us.
not. I don't know what to say. It's not just liking Joe Biden. It's also knowing if you convict Joe Biden that Donald Trump will win the presidency. And if you're here to tell me that the average person
so now we're
that makes
adding
up
another layer then.
I don't know what to say. Like I just think that we're going to have to agree to disagree because I live in reality and you don't. If you think that the overwhelming jury poll in DC isn't favorable to Biden and unfavorable to Trump.
Can you show me that jury poll?
Yeah, you want to see? Let's look. So DC is one of the most Democrat cities in the country.
Okay.
Oh, damn.
I'm a registered Democrat and I don't like Joe Biden. I present myself as a piece of evidence.
Okay. So let's see. 76% registered Democrat, 6% Republican.
Where are you seeing this?
This is on Wikipedia.
Wait. Is that just like the voting delineation in DC? Like who votes which, like on average?
As of March 31st, 2016, Democrats make up 76% of registered voters in the District of Columbia, while 6% represent registered Republicans.
Okay, I know this is probably confusing to a Republican, but Democrats don't necessarily think of the whole team sports thing. We're perfectly fine to criticize our quarterback.
Absolute bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. In fact, it's provably bullshit. The Democrats, particularly as an elective body, continually stick together. Are you telling me right now that there's less infighting with Democrats than Republicans?
That's a tough one. I don't know if I can.
There's clearly not, dude. They vote unanimously on almost everything. Maybe there'll be one or two Democrats that peel off. Almost every single piece of legislation of import, they vote unanimously, as opposed to Republicans.
Well, so now we're back. Now we're off of the voters who are going to be comprising the jury, and we're back on the legislators. So which is it? Which one are we talking about?
You're fair. That's fair. That is a different distinction, but it shows in general that when it comes to politics, that Democrats at the political level stick together, and it's certainly true.
It shows that the DNC sticks. But as does the
true.
the GOP.
It's
But
certainly
in
true.
terms of the
It's-
voter base,
listen,
I don't think that's necessarily.
I'll leave you
the fact.
say your
I know
piece
there's
here.
people, I know there's Republicans who don't like Trump.
Okay.
So, like, I don't think that just because you vote a certain party means that you ideologically fall in line with everything that the party establishment tells you.
Okay, I'm not going to discuss this anymore with you because it's absolutely fucking laughable. Anyone who remotely pays attention knows that Democrat and left-leaning people over and over and over will prefer their ideology and will stick together in lockstep to obtain power, particularly when it comes to court cases and other venues like that. They will
Then why are there
please,
anti-Zionist Democrats critical of
I
Biden?
sat there and listened to you screed, right? Like, they will convict Trump for anything. There is a rape allegation that comes from the plot of a Law and Order SVU episode from years ago for some woman that says I was in this dress that didn't even exist until 3 years after the fact, and Trump raped me in public in a department store. Yes, absolutely, they say. Guilty, fucking convict them. They don't care. They hate the orange man, and they understand the political ramifications, and these people are more likely than Republicans overwhelmingly to do anything they can in the legal system to take down Trump and to protect their interest and people that are going against Donald Trump. You can say that's not the case. That's fucking fine. We're at loggerheads here. Anyone who's remotely paying attention knows that's the case. And I have no interest in arguing this obvious point of reality if you're just going to willfully ignore it. You saying, but some Democrats are mad about Biden's Palestinian thing. Yep, absolutely, totally agree. What's that? Are you voting for Trump? You're mad about him with the Palestinian thing. Voting for Trump?
Your claim was that all Democrats fall ideologically
I
in
didn't
line
say
with their
all.
party.
I said that it would be almost impossible that basically Joe Biden in this political context would never be indicted for any crime in D.C. because they would understand the politics of it, and it's overwhelmingly Democrat, and that's who the jury pool would be made up of, and they're not going to invite... The proof's in the pudding. He's literally admitting that he has classified material in a fucking box, and they're not charging him because they say, well, a jury would find him sympathetic.
So you're saying that you believe that even if the jury, if let's say this got to a criminal case, right? If he was actually indicted rather than just a special counsel report, and the jury was comprised of 12 registered Democrats who were all fervently anti-Zionist and highly critical of Biden, you still think that they would not convict him?
Yes, absolutely, 100% confidence.
Okay, what evidence do you have to support
because
that?
they would. Are you an anti-Zionist?
I'm definitely more supportive of the Gazan cause.
And are you upset with Biden about that?
Yeah.
Who are you voting for?
I'm voting for Biden if he's the Democratic nominee.
I rest my case.
But that's not really, that doesn't mean that I have implicit support of everything he does. It means that I find him the lesser of two evils.
That's right. And so when you're a jurist and you're deciding...
That have to do with convicting? Yeah, that doesn't have, I don't know what that has to do with convicting him.
But when you're a jurist and you're deciding and say, if I convict Joe Biden, that means Donald Trump's going to win the presidency, you ain't going to convict Joe Biden.
I think you have a much higher opinion of how principled people like Democrats have of some of these positions. I think that there's like plenty of people. I mean, you and I both exist on Twitter. We've seen the like reeing from like annoying leftists about the shit that Biden doesn't do that they wish he would do. Like I think there's plenty of people who just
I'm done talking about it. There's no way I'm going to convince you.
There's plenty of leftists that aren't even voting in the upcoming election because they don't find it either.
I'm done discussing this with you. I think that it's self-evident. You disagree with me. There's nothing more to say in it. You have anything else?
Of course I disagree with you. That's why we're debating, Rob.
No, on this particular point, like whatever. Do you have anything else that you wanted to talk about these classified doc cases?
I mean, I'll just assert that you failed to establish the double
No,
standard.
wait. By all means, we'll give you a closing statement. But I mean, do you have any other topics?
No, that's it. That's it. I will assert that you have failed to establish your case.
Okay, that's your closing statement. You could have the final statement if you want. You're a guest on my show, so if you want the final statement, that's fine. Because I'm going to give a closing statement.
Blue, I guess.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so that's it. Now I'll give my final statement, and then you can shout out your channel again. And you cool with that? That's good. I get to bed at a reasonable hour. Holy shit. That's not
I wake up pretty early too, so I'm actually quite glad for that. I appreciate you saying we could start early.
No, wait, good. I'm glad.
Always works out for me.
No, wait. Okay, so here's my final statement.
Go ahead.
I feel that it is evident based on this that the double standard has been established. You could see how my opponent constantly waffled, was put in a corner, and then had to deny the things he said. We started off talking about why this debate came about. The reason this debate came about, and he agreed, was because I was having a discussion on Twitter with left-wing streamers that I debated that said the most compelling piece of evidence they saw that on its own was a smoking gun that proved the guilt of Donald Trump was when he admitted to having some sort of classified evidence on tape and was was sharing that with a writer. And I asked him, do you think that alone would be reason to convict Donald Trump? And he said yes. Immediately, the walkback started as I proved that Biden did that multiple times. Then he walked back and had to say things like, well, if he handed the documents over in a reasonable amount of time, it would have been okay. Then when I illustrated him that Biden took over 7 years or 6 or 7 years to hand back those documents, then that standard moved again. What happens is people want to say because Trump obstructed, which is a different classification of crime altogether, that's reason enough to charge him not just for the obstruction, but also for the mishandling of classified docs. And when Biden did it, well, we can't charge him because reasons. There's evidence. But we went specifically through the evidence, and that's why I continually asked him. So, for example, we went continually through the evidence with the Afghanistan boxes. He couldn't give anything other than say, well, one piece of evidence isn't sufficient and dementia. And then when I said, yeah, that's ridiculous that that's what it's come to, it's absurd, he shouldn't get off the hook, because people were saying in 2017, Biden had dementia so bad that we can't charge him for the crimes he was committing then. That is insane. That is absolutely asinine. It's ridiculous, particularly when the Biden administration's out there saying, how dare you accuse us of having dementia? Which I've said is the entire argument in the first place. That instead of saying, oh, Joe Biden has dementia or he doesn't, saying, okay, Democrats, you're right, he doesn't have dementia, charge him with the crime. Right? They've successfully shifted the narrative. It's absolutely absurd. Then my opponent also says that actually Donald Trump has dementia. But conveniently, his dementia started exactly in 2022, 2023. So he still can be charged with crimes he allegedly committed. Right? It's absolutely farcical and nonsensical. And I outlined the evidence of double standards that occurred at the FBI and other institutions over and over prior. So to just then, at the end, we're left to default to, but I trust her, take it up for her, I'm not a legal expert. You can see the absurdity of that position. What it shows is that her has outlined the evidence that shows obvious crimes, admitting to having classified documents. That's willful retaining. Admitting to saying these things are probably classified and still voluntarily not only reading, but at one point showing the material to his ghostwriter. These are obvious crimes. And the fact that he's not being charged because he cooperated, which he didn't, he held on to this material for 7 years. If he would have immediately turned it over, you could say that's cooperating. The other thing is this, we didn't get into this, and you could respond to this part if you want because we didn't get into it. The truth is, this double standard was why they went after Trump in the first place. Why did NARA seemingly never notice anyone has classified documents missing except Donald Trump? In fact, the guy in charge of NARA that's a clear Trump hater that's been shown through his post and things like that, he said initially as Trump was walking out the door, I suspect he has classified documents. Meanwhile, classified documents were going around the Penn Biden Center, Biden's garage, Biden's Virginia home. He's reading stuff, and somehow they never knew. And they didn't know about Mike Pence, and they didn't know about only Trump. They initially suspected. And that's the truth. What happened is, it's just like you could say when people that talk about double standards with policing when it comes to racial bias and things like that. They'll continually prove, like, imagine the cops continually pull over black people. Your car was making a funny sound. License and registration. At some point, you might find out that their license and registration aren't up to snuff. But the question is, why are you only concerned about those particular types of people? That's exactly what happened. Trump was cooperating. He cooperated quite significantly over and over. He voluntarily allowed the FBI to come in. He allowed them to search his entire home. He allowed them to see that he had it secured behind locks and other such things. His lawyers were arguing because, unlike with Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and a jury could find this, actually has a claim that he's allowed to have all these materials because the mere fact he took them as president means he had declassification authority, which Biden didn't have. Now, you might disagree, but this is another argument that jurists could decide. And certainly if there's a Trump-supporting jurist on there, they may say, I think the president has the ability to declassify, therefore he didn't commit any of these crimes. And yet, despite that, the FBI, instead of continuing to cooperate with his lawyers, decided to kick down the fucking door in another completely unprecedented action. It's very reminiscent to the Trump-Russia collusion situation, where they have this corrupt investigation and they can't get Trump for what they're accusing him of, colluding with Russians. So what do they get him for? He obstructed. He was against us and our over-odious intrusions into his life as president. The same could be said here. He's treated differently in every aspect of the legal system, and then maybe it's not the smartest thing to fight back, but when he does fight back, they go, see obstruction. Oh, and our guys committed the same crime? Well, we're not going to charge him because he has dementia, but he doesn't have dementia. How dare you accuse him? But he cooperated after holding this material for 7 years. Another thing we didn't talk about that I would love to get into was, even though Biden possibly is a defense of having classified material in his notebooks when he's vice president, he certainly doesn't have any excuse whatsoever from having materials when he was a senator. He's not allowed to take those documents home. There are special places called SCIFs that you have to read those classified documents. Yet the Hur report shows that they found documents from his tenure as senator, which means that he took those documents when he was senator. So all of this adds up to Joe Biden clearly committed a crime. It is my preference that for the crime of mishandling classified information, I think that we either need to charge all of these people or charge none of these people. But instead, we only selectively charge Trump. And there's not really a compelling argument that my opponent made or anyone else is going to be able to make to explain why this isn't a blatant double standard, other than just saying, well, blame her, he's a Republican, and Biden has dementia, and juries would have let him off. If we allow this sort of thing, and anyone who's paying attention, JC, I understand you don't agree with me on this point, but I think we run danger of giving practical immunity to politicians because we say we would never charge them for any crime because as long as they're being charged in a district where people favor Democrats and they're afraid that that indictment would harm Democrats as a whole, particularly when it comes to a national presidential race, then they have an incentive not to indict them. Therefore, we don't bring charges in the first place. If the crime was committed, the charges should have been brought. Hur went out of his way to come up with absurd legal defense after absurd legal defense. One of the things that I asked that we didn't get to at the end of it was, or in the middle of this discussion, do you think Joe Biden would even bring up the I have dementia defense in front of a jury? Because a jury would only accept that defense if it was, I don't think he would have. He's not now. Why isn't he saying it now to the American people? So the idea,
he's saying it with his actions.
If that's the case, and you're a prosecutor and you know, I know this fucking guy committed this crime and he's going to be out there screaming, I don't have dementia, then you should charge it. And if the jury decides to be like, fuck it, we don't care, we think he has dementia, that's on them. But at least it incurs what should have happened, that the crime was committed and you did your due diligence to try to go out there. Coming out with you can see that it's completely different with her, how he went out of his way to be like, here's all the potential legal theories of the defense. So even though I think he committed this crime, we're not going to charge because I don't think I could get a jury to convict. That's always what they do. It's the same thing they did with Hillary Clinton. No reasonable prosecutor. It's bullshit. That's where the prosecutorial discretion comes in. They constantly always say when it comes to these people that are Trump's opponents, well, it looks like there's a crime here, but we don't think a reasonable prosecutor or jurist would ever convict, so we're going to let it off the hook. They don't give Trump that. Look at some of the cases with Trump. He's being charged in the Stormy Daniels case. For what? Well, for doing the same thing Hillary Clinton did. Except Clinton did it more obviously. She failed to disclose payments for the Steele dossier that was used to spy on Trump. What's she given? Small fine. Don't do that. Trump's criminally charged. For what? For paying an extortionist that threatened to out him. That's not a campaign expenditure. They rely on the fact that that expenditure was purely to benefit his campaign. If that's the case, then getting a haircut's a campaign expenditure. And yet Trump's being charged with the crime and Hillary's team wasn't. Or the Ernagorn case in New York, where he's accused of over-evaluating his properties. Clearly bullshit. Clearly a bullshit case for reasons I could get into if JC wants at a later time. So the idea that like, oh no, these prosecutors are very reasonable and they look and they say, oh, what are the possible defenses? It's bullshit. They know that they'll be able to find juries in these left-wing areas that will convict Trump of anything. Oh, need I forget the E. John Carroll case that we already talked about. And they know that they'll let Biden off the hook. And for prosecutors to say, well, therefore, we're not going to charge the people like Biden, but we will charge people like Trump, allows people, not necessarily like JC here, but allows people on the left to say, see, Biden didn't do anything wrong. And it benefits Biden massively politically. It allows the media to run with this narrative. Trump's a criminal, but not Biden. Trump's a criminal, but not Hillary. When actually it's just a double standard. And lastly, we can see the evidence is overwhelming that the people at the FBI hate Trump. The evidence of bias, even from the IG report, is obvious. The question is just whether or not they acted on that bias. So when you see the two-tiered system that you constantly see, there's one set of rules for Trump and another set, and you see that messages show that there are people at the FBI talking about things like insurance policies to stop Donald Trump, and you can see Rosenstein accusing of wearing a wire to get the 25th Amendment, or Comey and his obvious actions, holding I'm with her mugs and shit like that. It's evident that the establishment institutions in this country hate Donald Trump, and they'll do anything possible to take him down. It's a double standard, and I wish my opponent would look at it more clearly. I hope he looks into things like the Russiagate hoax and the unlawful FISA warrants that was used to spy on Trump, and starts to realize that there's a very clear-cut emerging pattern that this case immediately fits into. That's it.
Russiagate wasn't a hoax. They did find evidence of collusion.
What was the evidence of collusion? Go ahead.
Rob, you have a good rest of your night.
We'll see.
After listening to
Hey,
you repeatedly strawman me in your closing, I'm not really interested in continuing the conversation.
cool. I'll say this real quick. At least you came on. I don't think you did a great job, but you did come on, and I'll give you credit for that. So
always willing to have a conversation with anybody who's willing to engage with me.
okay, all right, man. Oh, do you want to shout your channel out?
Sure. And then I have one other like completely off-topic thing that I wanted to say to you.
Okay.
The Big JC. The Big JC is on that's on YouTube and Kick, and then the Big JC on Twitch is on Twitch. Rob, I heard about your dog. I work with dogs. I'm very, very passionate when it comes to dogs. I'm really sorry to hear that you're going through some rough times, and I hope that things get better soon.
Thank you, really. I really mean that. Thank you. Yeah.
I really hope that she's okay.
Yeah. You know, we all go, and she's getting old, but I hope that she has a happy time, is comfortable, and she has many more years ahead of her. So thank you.
I mean, yeah. Thanks. Well, you have a good rest of your night, man.
You too.
Thanks for the conversation.
It's very nice. Thank you. All right. I'll be right back, channel. I'm gonna just do this. Excuse it. No, he's game to come on, which is more than I could say for the majority of these people. He did come on. I didn't think he was particularly offensive or anything, but you know, I got to say, I'm not impressed. I mean, I just don't know. It's frustrating. I understand I debate in a sort of a unique way, but it's a constant source of frustration for me that basically what people say is anytime you point out these double standards, but Trump's different. It's different. The two situations aren't directly analogous. And again, the entire conversation started because people talking about the fact that Trump admitted this on tape. That's, you know, that's smoking gun evidence. So I asked him right out of the gate at the beginning of the debate, and he said, yeah, that's enough evidence to convict. That's a good jumping off point. Okay, Biden did it multiple times. And unlike Trump, he didn't just say, look, I got this evidence. He read it aloud. I have to admit, I did something a little shady there, though. I'm going to give you a little secret. There were a couple arguments I didn't make because I'm saving them. Because I'm going to bring them out. Because I'm laying a little trap for someone. So eventually I'm not going to say any names, but I'm laying a trap. Laying a trap. I can't wait to spring it. So that'll be fun when that happens. It's probably not even what you're all thinking, but I can already see. I know what the defense is going to be, and I'm going to spring this trap, and I would say there's an 80% chance that it's going to leave the person dumbfounded and scrambling. So we'll see. Anything else to talk about tonight? You know, I don't know if I'll be streaming tomorrow or not. We'll see. If I am, it's going to be around 8 or 9 whenever my son falls asleep. He stopped taking naps. So it used to be he would take like a 2-3 hour nap in the middle of the day. Then he might be up until 10. And that made it difficult to come up and stream because he gets very upset if I'm home and I leave and I come upstairs. He doesn't like that. But he's been falling asleep. Without the nap now, he's falling asleep around 7 or 8, which means I can sneak up here earlier and start streaming. So it's been good in that event. Just a reminder, I did record at the beginning of this live stream a video on the idea that this agent in the 302 or that wrote the 1023 has been indicted. I put a post up. I don't know if anyone replied, but I thought it was hilarious. I'll recap this real quick. There's 1023. This is the guy that said, I heard Zlochevsky say he paid Biden $5 million to fire Shokin. That guy's been indicted. So I did a video on it. I read quickly through... what's up, Mitch? I read quickly through the indictment. And you want to know my take on it? Here you go. You ready? Here's robnoerr's take on it. Pisco, the Destiny, Dylan Burns, any other lefty, you make a mistake. See, the indictment says that the best way that they're able to prove that this guy lied was he said he met these Zlochevsky and these people from Burisma in 2015 and 2016 when Obama was president. But clearly when he said 2015 and 2016 when Obama was president, he meant 2017 when Trump was president. So all good. You get it? You get that little trick there? Anyone get it? Aftershock might get it. You get it? Oh, he said 2015, but what he really meant was 2017. That's what he meant. So, no need for a crime. I got the Kevin James. I wish Kevin James, badass, man. Sort of did some MMA. And yeah, Aftershock gets it. Because, to someone like Pisco, when Jabal Bowman tells the police, I pulled that alarm, but I did not intend for the alarm to go off. Pisco says, actually, what Jabal Bowman meant was, I pulled that alarm and I did intend for it to go off. And when Donald Trump says go and march peacefully, actually what he meant was go and march unpeacefully. March violently. That's what he meant. So we'll see if that defense works when it's other people, right? Oh, actually, when he said 2015, he meant 2017. That's what he means, right? And Pisco, you can already see it on Twitter. People are like, look at this fucking cope. Look at the cope, man. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Right. They know. Here's another thing. Pisco immediately started commenting on this. Still can't comment on the Herr report. Hasn't got to the parts about Biden breaking the law yet. It's been 8 days, hasn't got around to it. But he can comment. He can comment on this indictment. Give him a break. Give him a break. He needs time, man. Of course, the Bowman indictment was 2 pages, and he never had time to comment on that either. Or the report from the police. 2 pages. Takes a lot of time to read 2 pages. Just didn't get around to commenting on it. So, but I did do a little video on that's dead serious, talking about my thoughts on that. And so I'm going to try to upload it to X and maybe YouTube here as soon as I sign off. So, the truth is, I'm not right about everything, and I never said definitively 100% that this confidential human source in the 1023 was absolutely right. I said it was more evidence to investigate than Christopher Steele's allegations, is what I said. What's the update on the Pisco debate? What Pisco debate? He just calls in when he feels like it. Watch the debate I had with Cherry as the moderator, and I'm really important in that Destiny or Chick Straighter Aid. I don't remember that one. I did a lot of panels like that. I don't know. But yeah, so hopefully I'll upload that video to X and maybe YouTube here later tonight. Though I am going to go downstairs and start hanging out with my wife. I don't know what we're going to watch. I've got Hank into watching like some stuff that I sort of like. So like he watched like Batman, the animated series, and then the Justice League. This, it's kid stuff, but it's kid stuff I liked when I was a kid. So I'm more into it than like Cocomelon or something. We watched, today we watched Jungle Book, the original one. Watch Fury, is it good? Yeah, Jungle Book was good. And Aladdin, the original Aladdin with Robin Williams. Judge Judy, what's up, Go Rams? He did ask for Judge Judy one night. Watched an interview with Ian. I think he mentions there was a debate on a convention and he tried to get you on. I don't know what that would be referring to. Now, Ian did basically get me on Tim Pool's show March 1st. Allegedly, that's happening. The January 6th debate was when he moderated Alex Jones and Glenn Greenwald and Darren Beatty versus the Krasensteins and Destiny. Maybe he did push for me to be on that. Dude, that would blow me away if I got to be in that debate. And halfway through that debate, Glenn Greenwald, who was attending virtually, his camera feed went out. And I messaged Ian, was like, dude, bring me in virtually. I'll fucking wreck these people. Would have been happy to do it. But unfortunately, he didn't. So maybe he did. Hey, Alex, bring Rob on it. It didn't happen. But Ian's a cool guy. I like him. And he's done a lot speaking up for me, which I really like. And I really enjoyed my interview I did with Ian, too. So, straight right to him. Whatever, dude. Oh, man, it's just been so fun. Like, the shit, like, I love the meta arguments. I love. It to me, it says so much about something. You can tell. You might think I'm a fucking Trump-loving hack, whatever. Like, fine. But the meta arguments never come out looking ridiculous for me. Because I'm just saying what I honestly believe. If I'm just saying what I think, planning a move ahead to win a debate strategically, you inevitably sound something, if you run into someone who knows what they're doing, you're going to sound like a fucking idiot. And you see it all the time. So, for example, there's this discussion. I'm just tangentially involved on X, right? And it's about Conor, and we talked about this at the start of the stream. It's about, Conor Counterpoints working for a progressive PAC. getting paid by Democrats to help Democrats win, and whether or not he could still claim to be a Republican. So we're having this debate, and people are defending Conor. One of the persons says, like, well, that's because under Trump, they don't represent anything that's conservative anymore, the Republican Party. And another person's like, okay, what are the sort of, I disagree. I think Republicans still represent conservative things. What are the sort of things you think they're not doing that's against, or you think they're doing that's against conservative values? You want to know what the dude brings up? Now, of all the things you could say, I could come up with a lot of things that I don't think Republicans in general do that are conservative. For example, massive spending. Not conservative. You go over to the Crucible right now, and I'll guarantee if someone's streaming, they'll be telling you how there haven't been real conservatives in political power for the past 40 years in this country. Allowing gun control, not fighting on a lot of these cultural issues, blah, 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 right? You know what these lefties choose as their issue? Being pro-life. That's not conservative. Huh? They want to tell women that they can't have abortions. What? You're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? You might say, I hate that. I think Republicans are bad. I think that's controlling women. But to make the claim that pro-life isn't conservative is laughable. Of all the things you could have said, well, I can't, as a Republican, as a conservative, I can't vote for Trump's party anymore because they're pro-life. What? I was baffled. And then the person presses like, well, I'm saying specifically, there's a couple people that said that, like, even if it's not viable, you shouldn't be allowed to abort. That's a small handful of people. I don't know that that's MAGA. I don't know that I connect that with Trump. Well, next time I talk to Destiny, I can ask him why he claims to be pro-establishment. When someone in his audience asked him, he said in order for a country to be truly prosperous, it needs to have strong institutions that people can trust, which doesn't have anything to do with people that are in the establishment. Well, it sort of does. Like, I could see making the claim that being pro-establishment means being pro-institutions, because the establishment is made up of institutions. The problem is the same problem I have with Conor. Conor makes the same sort of claim. He says he's a Burkean Republican. And as a Burkean Republican, that means protecting our Republican institutions, blah, blah, blah. They need to be safeguarded and protected. Destiny's sort of right. For a functioning country, you need functioning institutions. And there's not just political institutions. For example, you need functioning media, functioning entertainment, functioning corporate America, functioning politics. And you need people to trust these at functioning doctors, like the medical industry. It's true. But the problem is we don't have that. So saying I reject someone who condemns these institutions because the institutions are important. I'm condemning the institutions, but I'm not saying they're not important. I'm saying they're corrupt. For example, I say all the time, the media constantly pats themselves on the back. Oh, we're the fourth estate. We hold truth to power. We're the last balkanization of protecting the people of information from the powerful people in corporate America and in Washington. We're very important. They're right, they are. It's just they no longer are the media. Instead of holding truth to power, they bury the truth for the powerful. But they're right. Actual media and journalism is very important. It's a fucking shame we don't have it. But it seems like what people like Destiny will say is then, well, therefore the media is important, therefore you can't criticize them. Sure, they could be criticized if they no longer do the thing that we agree was important that they do. Yeah, Madnet, maybe that's where the difference is. What's up, Econo Boy? Is this a partisan shield total more on Vampire Wagon Ian Crow? I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know how well JC did there, but we'll leave it up to people. Anyways, I'll try to put that recording up before I go downstairs here, but I got to go. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you all. If you see me tomorrow, it'll be around 8 or 9 p.m., between 7 and 9 p.m., we'll say. So thank you so much. Really appreciate all the support I do. You guys are the best. The show's only good because there are people that are willing to listen. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. As always, have a good one.